I think that's a good way to do it.
You know, I've been saying that for years and nobody listened to me.
Well, Sam maybe was listening
Sam
to you.
did.
Anyway, Nick, could you start us off in prayer, please?
Father, we thank you today for your grace and your mercy. Father, I know this is going to be a trying 2 or 3 days, but Lord, give us the strength and just the desire to serve and to make things what they ought to be so it brings glory and honor to your name. Forgive us this day. Be with those who might be in harm's way, Father, that you build protection about them. Grant wisdom, for we seek it today. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if everyone would please sign in. We have Amy is the only one that is absent, and hopefully, is she on Zoom, Sheila, or?
No, because on the.
Or she's just on?
We don't have any way of.
Okay, all right. Okay, so, everybody look over the minutes.
Oh, there's no minutes.
No minutes?
Need to table those, please.
All right.
It's in your green folder. Just table them.
Okay. We're gonna table the minutes. Okay, Jim, you have our financial review.
Hi. Good morning, council. I know we've got 3 full days here, so kind of brief, so just kind of an outline. Some of the things as far as the accounts this is the regular meeting, but some of these do touch in on budget, so I've kind of combined both. Overall, there's been really good consistency through the funds. The general fund, as of yesterday, had approximately 1.3 million. I'm rounding. Lit at it had 700,000 rounding. Riverboat around 230,000. Gives you about a total of 2.3 million of liquid funds. Those are your most flexible funds to operate with. The 1.3 in the general, at least as of yesterday, the lit distribution that we get of about 211,000 had not posted. That puts it right at the 1.5. That's been consistent May, June, July, and going into August at 1.5, 1.4. So all of those. All of your other major operating funds, EMS, highway, 911, all of those have positive balances. There's just been a very high consistency all the way through. So in the other, you have on more the long-term or more capital outlay funds, the jail correctional facility, that is the best way I can describe that, the seed money for the jail. Almost all of that is being banked. That's at just over $1 million. That's a good number. That's in that fund. The American Rescue Plan, as far as the second distribution that has came in, that has been deposited, that's right at about $3.4 million. So in those funds, as far as revenue recovery or for jail, that's about $4.5 million. Now, the American Rescue Plan by law has to be spent and those plans, but those have been deposited in. So, opinion, as you work through all of this, your appropriations for the next 3 days, I'd like to start out, I do think there has to be a general awareness, one, of just the external factors. As far as inflation, this country right now, from economic, been on your definition, but from previous historical definitions, the country's in a recession. Inflation is at the highest amount that it's been in basically the last 40 years. Increases in food, increases in gas, increases in supplies. All of these, I would kind of recommend the council keep in mind as far as trying to look ahead and look at these budgets and what that would mean. If we could go back in the imaginary time machine, I don't know that a year ago, like we said, gas is gonna hit $5 a gallon, all of these things are. So you're trying to make predictions here in August of 2022 to carry all the way through December of 2023. It's not an easy task, really, in the most normal times. I would say respectfully, this is abnormal times in every way of things going on. Would keep those in mind. The other caution that I would have, we don't want to be the proverbial chicken little and wait for the sky is falling. But as for Owen County, as far as emergency relief funds, an elevator go out, the building, the flood, the blizzard, we are not, as a county, we don't have a lot of flexibility here for it. Most of the budgets that you see from 2022, they're appropriated out to maybe 30,000, maybe even 50,000 of leeway. So what I'm saying is there's very thin margins all the way across. In the capital, remind myself on this. On the capital development is 309,000. What I mean by that is that's the total amount of money, cash that's available for roof, elevator, for all of the county buildings. So just would kind of keep that in mind. If there is something that goes wrong or some major repair, right now, there's about 300,000 in that fund, but there's very little marginal in anywhere else that you want to look. Just precaution. So I mean, and kind of not to belabor that point, but what happened a few years ago when the floods came in that area, 2018, 2019. What we found is that since FEMA and there was no reimbursement at all, that pretty much wiped out those funds, and we've really been in a struggle ever since then. I mean, of just kind of going on a cash allowance. Certified rates, council, I can't stress this enough, and I know you're all aware of that, but when it's time in your budget as far as the certified rates, general, election, reassessment, bridge, health, EMS, and the capital development, those are your funds in that levy. Really roundy, but it starts at a 0.4 and goes kind of across. These be critical for it. They say this opinion, but I also say this empirically based. The amount in your rate for the EMS is too high, that'll have to be adjusted. But I would stress as you work through here, one of your priorities this year would be making sure on your certified rates with that. Your options that are coming to you, you are going to be bombarded with information from the budget, from requests coming in over these next three. The just roughly, high rounded, looks to me like roughly about $2 million in additional increases have been asked as compared to 2022. Most of these are in the salary, not all of them. So options, I would say, really without any hesitation, I respectfully cannot find any way that you're going to be able to grant all $2 million. I don't see that, and I think that the Department of Local Government Finance, when they look at that, probably would weigh in on that. So for everyone coming up, everyone going to present, at some point the answer no is going to be there. So as far as a group here are looking, one of your answers is, and I'm not recommending this, but if the answer is no to everything, just no, we're not going to raise it. Obviously, that's your most conservative approach. That would put much more money in the general fund. It would not solve all of your problems. So an absolute no to everything really is not one of the options. An absolute yes to everything is also not going to be one of your options. There's a finite amount of resources. As you've seen in different types of the reports coming in, with the work, you have a very good idea as far as your revenue streams. I think we can pretty well safely predict the money that's going to come in for the remainder of the year. And I think that even on your fixed rates, which when I say fixed, I mean more like the lit distributions, because those are constant throughout the year, whether it's 211 or 254, you just multiply those by 12. even your variable rates, like the highway, you've got a good 6-month average, that comes out to about $134,000 per fund and $69,000 in local. So we really do, as a fiscal body, have a very good indicator of the money that's going to come in. The tax rate, just as a reminder, it's already at, as far as the income tax, that's not another source of revenue. I would not recommend, no, I don't know that you've asked or even wanted to do that. There are a couple options of property tax increase. There's no recommendation. I don't think there's any consideration of that whatsoever. Only reason I bring that up is when we're talking about a finite, those income tax levels can't be increased. I mean, you cannot exceed any of those. So somewhere, if no is not the answer, and yes, and ultimately yes not the answer, we're working through it, and I know that'd be the issue. Saying that, projects, the jail project was put on hold for this year. The jail project cannot be put on hold indefinitely. That is not a possibility. Very rough estimate would be about $1.5 million per year. Is it just give you a ballpark of what this jail would cost. Your 1233 fund does not generate that. That gets about 71,000, I believe, 71,000 a month in there. That is not going to cover it. You're going to have to go either out of lit edit, or you're going to have to go out of 1170, which is what we're calling the sheriff's fund for his department, or you're going to go out of general fund. Lit edit gets about $84,000 a month, and most of that has already been appropriated for insurance and then for the community crossing grant for highway. As of 2022, the 1170 sheriff's budget, the amount of money coming in and the amount of money that's already been appropriated as of a few weeks ago, there's $33,000 difference. That's it. That's all. So at this point, just as of today, almost anything that you were going to have to do to use beyond 1233 is going to come out of the general fund. If there's about $800,000 a year coming into 1233, roughly, just roughly, that leaves about $700,000 that's got to come somewhere else. Right now, your path would be out of the general fund. I say that because of this, only just in keeping in mind as working through these numbers of what that would mean. Taking from here is going to have a reaction somewhere else. That would be my recommendation. With all this information you're going to get, maybe giving yourselves time to digest it, look at the different questions. In addition to the jail, at some point the zoning code is going to have to be amended. That's a universal. You're not going to find anyone that's going to say otherwise. Ballpark only, that's probably going to be in the range of about $200,000. Will just be a working number about as far as what that would cost to do that. A third project that's going to have to be done is ADA compliance. And I say that not because Owen County is not in ADA compliance, they are. But for the highway to get a community crossing grant, there are numerous mandatory requirements that counties are going to have to adhere to. One of those is bringing in essence, an engineering firm specializing in that to go around to all the public buildings and measure, verify, and sign off of the compliance. In order for the highway to continue to get the community crossing grants, that's one of the mandatory requirements, and it's ADA. It does not state that Owen County is not in compliance, but this is just one of those requirements. All three of those projects are going to have to be addressed in some way. As of in 2022, there's nothing really in the budget there that squared that around. Your insurance rates, and I'll wrap up, but your insurance rates looking ahead, these are very optimistic, but I think there's reasonable optimism in there. On group insurance, the commissioners have worked very hard. I think there will be an answer hopefully by late September, early October as far as those rates. There's at least the possibility that those rates may be constant as of the last year, or maybe a slightly increase, maybe in the range of 5%. I think that's a margin that we can at least look at right now. Now, your health insurance does go from the January 1st to December 31st. The last 2 years have been locked in. The hope is for this group insurance, when we get the rate, is a 2-year lock-in. Can't guarantee that, but that's the goal, is to help with the budget. That maybe it could be flat, maybe a slight increase, and maybe a two-year lock-in. The liability insurance and the workman's comp are not on the same calendar. They started April 1st, and then they run. So there's a 3-month kind of gap between the calendar year and they'll start. The hope is right now that workman's comp would kind of be in the same area. I don't think we're going to be that fortunate in the liability, probably looking at about a 5% increase. But based on inflation and everything, I hardly see that that's the worst news on it. We'll know a little bit closer budget, but I think probably safely, I think there's numbers that you have that you'll be able to work with as you start plugging in liability insurance, workman's comp, and the health. Reminder though, if I may, a massive increase in wages and salary will have an effect on your workman's comp. That workman's comp is based on the projected salaries. If salaries would go up substantially, that there will be an audit, and where we did not, as a county, have to pay that $20,000 or $30,000 for the audit, we cannot rule that out if there's going to be a very significant salary increase. Those would be the things that I would be. Obviously, if this is the rest of what I would say is the last 2 minutes. It's just purely personal opinion. I would ask that you look at sustainability. As far as if whatever comes in, whatever group comes in and says, here's how we can afford that. Does that plan work for 10 years? And in the case of like looking at jail, I think you have to actually look at something. Is this level of income going to be sustainable for the next 15 years? If someone comes up to you and says, well, we're going to cut this, is that something that can actually be cut realistically for 15 years that you're not going to need? If it's drawing from another fund, can that fund sustain that draw for another 15 years? I would ask you to kind of take a look at that of what it would be. We don't have any options as far as respectable raising income. Any area here that goes too high, no one's being laid off, but just going to keep in mind, I mean, that would be kind of the consequence. I mean, there would have to be then the reduction, of the cost for it. Before, when we had a little bit of an issue, there were kind of two options. We could cut costs and we could raise revenue. The raising of the revenue has been done. That area is there and it's reached, and it has produced exactly what you wanted to do as a council. But that option does not exist now. The only other would be is the cutting of it. So all I'm asking is just consideration when someone is coming into, well, we want this much. Can it be sustained for that period of time? And if it can't, then what is the alternative plan? What is the backup? You are in good financial shape as of this morning. Everything that has been done, everything that has been projected, your budget in 2022 has absolutely worked. What was said though a year ago, when I stood up here a year ago, was said, this is your budget that's going to be harder. And I don't see that that's changed in there. Last one, nothing, here's what you get, nothing. What can I get? You get nothing, you get nothing, you get nothing. That's not the scenario here. And I know that would be the answer. But I will just over and over through here, or I'm trying not to be rude, caution in every way. Can this be sustained? And then if the answer is yes, what is the ramification? What happens if we say yes? What happens in these other funds? You have limits, you only have so much money. And with your jail project, and I will promise it will wrap up, your jail project can only be out of the certified funds. So when you're looking at that 20, 25, 30 million, whatever it is, it can only come out of general, it can only come out of the 1170, the lit edit, it can only come out of those. Those are pledged, and those come first. If you're looking at that, and someone comes up, does that still allow you roughly that $1.5 million that you made in jail? At some point, all three of those projects I looked at, there's gonna be a point where they can't be ignored. Good financial, you're in a great place to go with decisions. I think you have reports, and I brought a lot of the others, if you have any other questions or anything as far as rates or remedies.
And we have a couple of hundred pages of documents here. With what you've said, would you put a cap on the dollar amount that we really need to be looking at and not exceed that?
Well, sure, Nick, but I'm gonna give you a very unhelpful answer, okay? I apologize, but it is. From what I'm looking at in here is, I think you must maintain a 1.4 million, and you voted 1.4 million. We went through this in May, June, July, and working in August. It's right fluctuating from 1.4 to 1.5. As far as my opinion, you have about $100,000 to work with in the general fund if you're going to keep that safety valve of the 1.4. One of those has already been taken care of, and it was a very legitimate decision of deciding that the recorder's office has to have more than one person in there. So that money has already been pledged there, okay? I'll round up, I'm just gonna round up, I'm just gonna call that 50,000. That gives you about 50 more thousand to work with. That is, 50,000 is nowhere near the $2 million that's coming your way on what you're asking for. So the reason I'm a bit unhelpful, Nick, is one of the key things is on the 1151, on the EMS, when you change that rate, what is that rate going to be? I'm just gonna throw out a number. If you change that back to like 04, and then you put everything back in the general, that's gonna give you a rate of at least a 0.3 or higher. That's going to put a considerable amount of money now into the general fund. I think you'd be realistic to look at probably $2.5 to $3 million in your general fund. Now we're talking about a much different amount in that fund. You're no longer at the 1.4. Your lost revenue, if that plan of the art works, could possibly put another $1 million in your general fund. My point is on that. It'd be nice if I could say, and I apologize that I can't say, it's 200,000, it's 300. What I'm saying is it wants to be, you've got to keep it as minimal as possible, because out of that money, when I'm throwing around all these numbers, millions of numbers, you've got to have a path of a $1.5 million to cover the note on the jail at a minimum. That has to be there. So now if you've got 3 million, you take the 1.5 out, now you're back to your 1.5 million, but you want to reserve a 1.4, now you're back to your 200,000. That's what I'm saying about looking at there. What's being asked is way too much. It's legitimate, it's totally legitimate. A person in here that's making $28,000 a year in 2022 has a totally legitimate request to come to you and say, this salary is too low. You already know that. The problem is, if someone look up there and say, look, I made this number, I want 28,000. All I want you to do is pay me $2 more thousand. You got $1.5 million in there. All I want is $2,000. That's totally fair. I understand that. Then you times it by 175, and you start putting those type numbers, and you throw in the perk, and you throw in there. That's where the dismal part of the economics comes in. But that, I would ask before I make any decisions, is it's that type of question. What does that affect? What will that affect the different funds?
Thank you, Chair.
With that, I'll wrap up. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. All right, on to old business, the 2022 compensation structure review.
just was tabled from the last meeting from, the meeting was canceled, the one meeting. I didn't know if you guys,
I think we just kind of need to put that on hold until after we're done with budget hearings.
So that doesn't make any sense. That is very much a part of our budget hearings, and that's a critical pathway for us to navigate through them. I don't know why it was canceled. I was never consulted about that. Is there a particular reason?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Right now, we don't, I mean, just if you were listening to what Jim said, I mean, we don't have a lot of money there for raises across the board. And that's basically what we had talked about in those wage study meetings. And we don't have a good handle on being able to go forward with that until we do get past our budget hearings. So that's why it was
So
canceled.
this council voted at the last meeting to commit up to $125,000 towards the general fund portion of the cost of taking action. Then somehow someone canceled the meeting where we were gonna plan for that, so that we would have numbers today to help us with our budget hearings. Now, I'm not happy about that, and you can tell that. I'm usually a calm individual. This has been a significant project for our county. It affects pay for every employee in our system, and it's been jerked around way too many times. We could have been a lot better prepared today. We have no way of figuring wages like we've done the last several meetings, because we've waited until this last minute to somehow just throw it out, and I don't know how we're gonna objectively figure out what kind of wage numbers to put into our line items today, starting our budget hearings. I have no idea. We have no direction, period. We have a lot of requests. There's a lot of interesting requests. There's a lot of thought that some department heads have put into that, and that's good, and we're gonna listen to those. But it makes it awfully difficult, believe me, very difficult and complex for us to put it all together in a budget. And I don't know why that meeting was canceled. That's not a good excuse. Well, we don't have money. That's not a good excuse. We committed $125,000 towards that. We know exactly how to do that. And then here we are empty-handed.
And
So
as you heard Jim say, 50,000 of that 120.
I heard Jim say what he said, and I disagree with some of it. I do respect what he went through, but remember, we have, and he mentioned that at the end of what he just shared, we have property tax. We're not figuring the property tax income even into these numbers. When he talks about breaking even, we talk about cash balance and those kind of things. We're just looking at where we're at currently with income tax revenue. Remember, we have a whole December settlement that we have yet to include in our normal revenue that we're talking about here. And settlement on property tax is pretty standard and pretty consistent year to year. There's a certain levy and it grows a little bit, which by the way is 5% this year. That levy growth, that's one of the most stable sources of income, and we're not even counting that into this.
Jim, you want to refute that?
That's a couple $1 million right there.
I mean, when you talk about us having the 100 and
Sure, no. What Anton and I are approaching something from kind of two different paths. But what I've always stated over and over and over when I present to you, I'm presenting what you have today or within that month. It's undisputable that it's $1.3 million as of yesterday. What you have then in the two property settlements is absolutely correct. One roughly in May and the other in December are the most common months. When you have a lit distribution, that's where you had the two numbers. Roughly the monthly amount of total income to the county, not including settlement, is in the range of about $250,000 to $260,000 per month. When you add the settlement, I think what we came up to was roughly around $400,000, $425,000 per month. But when I come to you and present that, you're not getting a settlement in September or October. So in working your cash flow that comes in, Slight different example. Highway department, I can project to the penny, I know exactly what the best they're going to get by the end of the year. We went through this with Greg, but they only get it every month. So even though I said with very high probability, they're gonna get over 700,000 more left at 1169. They're not getting it tomorrow. Yes, what they're going to get is roughly what they get every month, about $90,000 is what they're coming in. So how you as a council want to engage that, of whether using the roughly 250, 260,000 per month that you know is coming in, or you want to put out and go by 425,000. But the cash flow is the cash flow. Only getting paydays in May and December of that very large number. Typically, that money then is used to carry over for the differences. Almost each month, the amount of money that comes in from income, the lit income, more is expended. You go in the red, not in the red in the fund, but if you take a look and said, here's how much came in, 300,000, I think roughly, this past month, how much went out? About 400,000. Missed it by about 100,000. That's not anything wrong, different bills come in, but you did miss it by 100,000, but you're not in the red. Projected coming in, can be completely covered by the 428 coming in December. Now, what had unfortunately happened for Owen, I know we don't live in the past, but what happened in basically 19, 20, 21 was it was so far in the red, you had to take all that just to go, we're kind of close. And one year we didn't even make it. We missed it by I think it was about $6,000. We didn't even make that. Now you are. But yes, it depends, council, on which way you want to budget and project. Lit, 250, 260, or 428. It's two different ways. The numbers are still the numbers of what you've got, but you still have to balance your cash flow. You always have to balance your cash flow. No one will let you spend in the red. You're not spending in the red. But that would be the difference, I mean, as far as where those two numbers come from.
Because if we were just talking about payroll, yeah, you could count the settlement as our extra money to put in the bank, but we don't, I mean, we have other expenses besides payroll, so it has to last us for 6 months.
Payroll is our largest expense in
Yes,
county
it is.
government, okay? If you figure in, you can't just pick and choose what revenue you want to count for what project. You have to look at the whole picture.
You have to look at
Okay.
the picture.
And that includes property tax revenue, that includes income tax revenue, that includes all of your miscellaneous revenue as well. And I'm leaving motor vehicle out of this for the moment. But you have to look at all of those sources over the next year or the next 18 months and then count that against your expenses. But currently, if you figure in the property tax and the income tax, as Jim just alluded to, let's just say 400,000, Jim, that was the number he threw out, that's not exact. But let's say it's 400, and we have more than enough to cover the extra $11,000 a month we need to give a decent amount of adjustment to all employees in the system. More than enough. So the money argument, I'm tired of hearing that. We can figure it out. We can do something for everybody in our system and get something in place to move forward with this.
I'd like to support Anton. This is getting absolutely ridiculous. For 2-3 years now, the employees have been coming to us and saying, we need wage increases. We put out a wage summary or called in 2 different places to do wage summaries. We have told these people time and time again that we were going to do something, and yet in the last 3 years, we keep telling them no. And now we authorized, as a council, $125,000 to project what Anton had told us, to have a meeting so that we could determine whether we were going to go at the low side, the mid-mark, or the high side of what was presented at the last meeting. Either this council stands by its word, or we could just shut it down and walk out of here, because as far as I'm concerned, we gave our word to these people.
I would say that you are correct, and the 125 is what we fenced at the last meeting. I think it was a unanimous vote, so we've got the amount established.
Now I'll give you a dollar
Let me-
amount.
I'm sorry, Anton, may I?
Yeah.
I personally, I'd also like to say this. Jim, you're doing a great job. I think you've really helped us out. But you don't realize that some of us have already been on this council for 12 years or more and have had to deal with this, okay? We understand where that is, and I'd like to just say for Anton's sake, that guy's really good with numbers, okay? And when we were talking about this, I understand you wanna give us the concern and everything, but when we're up here, there's 7 of us, and we're gonna make that decision based on what each one of us is presented by each of these departments during the budget hearings.
Oh, certainly, you are the council.
Yeah, I know, but the way you spoke to me, I'm sorry, but the way you spoke to us like little children.
No,
I've been
I
up here
didn't.
for 12 years,
Chuck.
and I don't need to be told, which line items I can pull money out of, which I can do, so forth. You've done a great job, but to sit here for 20 minutes and tell me my job when I already know my job. Number 2, why aren't you working with the auditor? You just gave us everything that the auditor should be giving us. Are you our attorney or are you our paid auditor?
I believe,
I-
I will not speak to it, but I believe the auditor and I work almost daily
Mhm.
together, without any issue of any kind.
So before this goes further south,
You
Yeah.
have a manila folder that has all of Jim's summaries for pretty much every fund, where the balances, projections, and those kinds of things. Jim and I have gone through them as they've come through and discussed and talked. Anton threw out the 11,000, if you take that times 12 months, that's 132,000, so it's already a little bit above
yes,
the 125 or
yes, the
100.
whole point, this doesn't need to go south, Chuck, with all due respect. Jim has done an outstanding job.
Yeah.
My beef's not with him, okay? My beef is with the fact that we have kept kicking this can down the road, and to the original point, we voted to do something, and it somehow didn't happen, and now here we are unprepared. Now, to put this into perspective, just to let the audience know what we're looking at, if you were to take our projections, you take care of everybody, bringing them up to the low point, remember, that was the original request. Then you fill half of the gap between that low point and the midpoint. Basically, you go half of that amount, which is a pretty good chunk, okay, step in the right direction. The general fund cost is $119,061.
Including everything.
That includes workers' comp, which not a lot of workers' comp, to be honest, comes out of general fund. But PERF, FICA, that's in there, okay? And overall, system-wide, it'd be 284, but that includes the sheriff, which we know he has a proposal in front of us, and this would pay towards that, okay? We have the other, soil and, other separate funds, clerk registration, election, assessor, those kind of things. But general fund part would be within our target, and that's a pretty significant step towards getting these positions towards that midpoint. And it may take another year, let's be honest, right? But if we're gonna do some kind of meaningful action and take the step we need and stop the constant every month someone different comes in front of us situation, I really strongly recommend we follow through with what we talked about.
Well, we should have.
And we'll have the numbers we need to go ahead and put them into these budgets when we start our hearings here this morning. We will already know what dollar amounts we need to put in and put them on those line items and have real-time numbers on where our budget falls. And we desperately need that.
Can I ask you a question? Do we have at least a mid-mark that you have discussed where the mid-range was good? Would we be able to construct it rather quickly during these budget hearings?
Oh, yeah.
In that case, I make a motion that we go ahead and accept the mid-mark on the wage summary compensatory
Wait a
structure.
minute,
The wording's not quite,
I think we need to,
You make the motion, then I'll second it.
well, I'm gonna make a motion that the council follow up on its original commitment to be within that 125 limit for the general fund costs. That's gonna include bringing all employees system-wide up to the low point. In addition, go halfway to the mid, from the low to the mid, so the 25% difference there, the in-between. Okay, so you got your low point, your midpoint, we're talking halfway there, system-wide. Now that's gonna include highway, that's gonna include sheriff, but they are aware of it, they've got stuff they've been working on, okay? So that's something, we know that they're primed for this. But it takes care of our general fund, it takes care of our other departments, and it steps towards that midpoint.
Can
I
I
do-
ask you
And
to
that's,
clarify that motion before I second it?
Yeah.
Because this, are you making an actionable one, or are you asking for a meeting? Because I'm not sure I understood that.
I'm asking for a commitment with the motion to, this council's gonna decide to do that and implement it for the budget hearings that we're working on.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, on discussion, I want the council to realize that there are other avenues without taking this out of the general fund that has been presented to us. So I'm not sure, I mean, in my understanding, there's already been talk of using the 500,000 out of the ARPA money and earmarking that. And so for us to just,
ARPA money is not sustainable.
It's one-time money.
it is
One-time
fine,
money.
I know, but it's fine, there, you can say that about a lot of different things. But I'm just saying that I don't know if this is premature for us to make a motion like this. Discussion from the rest of us?
I wanna, sorry, I wanna clarify something. So, some unilateral raises were made, the courts, for example, late winter. And so when we're talking midpoint, and I just need help breaking this down. So Don's folks got left out, all right, that, with those raises. So where did, so those departments that got the raises, is that going to take them further up than, say, taking his folks to midpoint
So
today?
that's a good question. The answer is no, because departments that have already gotten a raise, you're looking at EMS, $0 are involved, other than the administrative position that's in there, okay? But we already gave paramedics and EMTs a raise the last go around. So when you're trying to fill a gap, when there's no gap now, there's no cost, obviously. So that's been done. That's not in these numbers because that's already been committed. But if you look at anybody else that has a gap, this would go towards that gap. Any position system-wide.
So you're
And that
saying,
wouldn't include courts because they're at the midpoint. There's no gap. EMS, paramedics. Now, I will say EMTs were actually a little below the midpoint in that proposal, but they're above the 25%. So again, there's no extra money or impact there.
so just to simplify, a D-level administrative employee in Don's office, are they going to make the same as a D-level in the circuit court?
Yeah, kind of, because the new classifications are based on whatever the COMET levels are according to the classifications in the last job description. So if you have let me look at, Don, we're not picking on you, but we're using it as an example,
No,
okay?
I am, because.
Let's see, for instance, we have a 4D administrator, okay? They are a COMET level D. There's a lot of other COMET level Ds, the regular office administrator in that area, office administrator in highway is a COMET D. Health department administrator, up in courts, the assistant court reporters are COMET D. So wherever they fit, that's the levels according to the report that they will be going to. So for prosecutor, going back to that to give you a kind of a dollar amount, just as an example, that 4D office administrator, if this particular motion or change was committed, that individual, that particular position would be about an $1,800 increase for the year.
Well, I tell you what, I appreciate Jim wholeheartedly on kind of that, and we talk about, you've been here 12 years, which I respect that, and I appreciate that a bunch. But the only way that we cut out of the red is from Jim. We listened to him, we did that, and we did it. I don't think that we can prematurely, and I'm glad that she postponed this until after this budget to where we know how much money we got and listen to other people that's got avenues that maybe they can save money without getting out of the general fund. I don't think that we can make a good judgment until we know what we got money-wise, period. And if people, and that's a census of all the people, they want a new jail, that's fine. But we've got to know how to pay for it every year. And we cannot just come out of the blue and give all these people right across the board raises before we know whether we can sustain that or not. And Jim has got us out of here, and I know that we do that, but there's a lot of things that we don't know what the expenses are gonna be in between times. So I think we need to figure the budget on what we've gotta spend, and then I'd want everybody to have a raise, but I don't think we ought to do it before we see the budget.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I find that absolutely shocking, Earl, because you voted for that motion last month. It was a unanimous motion to go up to $125,000. So you're telling me you didn't know last month when you made the vote to go yes?
I've studied a lot of this in the last month, and I realize a lot of things different.
Oh, that's cool. I'm just letting you know you voted for it.
Well, I think
Or we can
one thing that we all agree on, and I think Jim stated that we have around $100,000 of cushion. Voted for $125,000. So we're all not that far off here based, I think, on numbers. I mean, clearly, there's an opinion that, you know, based on revenue, that there will be more. But we did make a vote. Jim, we're in the ballpark, correct?
Sure, you've gained consistently a general fund in the area of about 1.5. Everyone, myself, anyone looking at that talks about a 1.4 reserve. It's a standard best practice. 125,000, either one is completely workable on how you want to go ahead and divide that up. That would put you back right near cushion, yes.
Jim, didn't you say that last month as well?
Right, I think I've tried to be as consistent as I possibly can.
Do you remember stating that something similar to that last month?
I checked not only that month, but probably month after month, yeah.
Thank you very much. So personally, now let's find out who canceled the meeting and why.
I'll tell you who canceled. It was me and Burl. And the reason for that was, and I did call him, we discussed it, we decided that we needed to have a more of an overview of the budget before we were able to, and I had gotten feedback from the employees that they were very frustrated. They didn't think that our wage committee meetings were going anywhere, and they were on board. So if you want to
Okay,
get mad at
So you guys took unilateral decision
And I discussed it
against
with
this
you.
council's vote. And telling me
They
that the people said they were willing to go along with that when they have been listening to us for 3 years. I'm sorry to go on about this, but either we hold to our word or we don't. I mean, well, it frustrates me. It's no wonder that these people can't trust us.
Absolutely.
I'm done. No, I'm done. I mean, I'm done. Y'all.
Yeah, wait a minute, hold on.
Oh,
I legitimately have work to do. So, and I've
Yeah,
got
let's
four up here. Can we hold a vote on this and you guys can argue later and just
I
move this
agree.
along?
I agree. Let's reiterate your,
Okay,
motion
so,
and let's move
the
forward.
motion was, and it has already been seconded, and for Sheila's, I know she turned a little bit older the other day, so, happy
Didn't
birthday.
always follow up with the
Yeah.
original at the 125,000 and all employees to the low point and halfway to the low
The
midpoint.
midpoint, so, and that is the guidance for our hearings. Now, we still can make whatever decisions we want during our hearings as we get more numbers, because let's be honest, budget hearings is a multi-month process. It's not the next 3 days and things are set in stone, remember that. We have to submit the budget by end of October, right? And there's gonna be, all of our lit estimates will be coming in from the state here in the next week. We're gonna need that, right, to formalize numbers. But in the meantime, we can't start budget hearings by just blindly putting, what kind of numbers would we even put in for wages? Are we gonna just,
Concise
keep them
it
at zero?
down, concise it down, Anton. I mean, make it very clear what your motion.
well, I made it clear what my motion was. We're having
Okay.
discussion right now,
Well-
so I think it's important.
Reiterate your motion for the rest of us then.
So the motion is to go to the minimum, as Sheila just mentioned, and also halfway to the midpoint. System-wide, that's our guidance for our budget hearings.
And the total cost is 119,061.
So the total cost for using the general fund limit that you had set at the moment is coming in at 119,000, so that fits.
So
Now, again, this is-
19,000 for
This
a
is the
year,
general fund, yeah, per year. Now,
off
that's,
of the general fund.
right. System-wide, it's 284,700.
But we also gave the recorder
Yes,
a person,
so that has to take 50,000.
That I did put in here last night, I updated this spreadsheet, the recorder's position is in there. That would qualify because that didn't involve a raise, that actually involved adding the position, so.
So what's the total cost is my question, when you take the recorders and this midpoint pay?
Everybody system-wide is 284,700. That's sheriff, that's highway, that's general, election, assessment, all of that stuff. General fund is 119.
284, I thought we said we capped us at 125.
General fund was the concern that we all had with money at the last meeting. So that is to keep it all under that umbrella or that limitation, that sub-limit, that's what we're looking at right now.
Okay, but the recorder's portion falls under the general fund. So,
Well, currently it falls under the perpetuation
I
fund.
understand, but
Yeah.
as far as January forward, it's going to fall under the general fund.
Mhm.
So my question is, when you take the recorder's, portion and you take the midpoint raises, does that go above the 125 threshold?
Well, I don't know, let's see here. Again, adding the recorder's position did not involve a wage adjustment. That was taking away part-time and replacing it with a full-time.
But it is still
Nothing.
taking away money from the general fund, is it not?
Well, it was out of the perpetuation fund.
But that was only temporary, am I correct? And
That was
that was
for-
only the part-time.
That's for the current budget year, which is, we still have several months left in. But you're looking at about 31,000 there. I mean, that's what that
So
position
the
is.
119 plus 31,000 in the general fund. Correct?
If you move it back into the general fund, yes. But that has nothing to do with wage adjustments. We added a position, we didn't affect the wage of it.
I know, but it's still gonna be money out of the general fund if we move her out of the perpetuation.
Well, anything that you move into the general fund is gonna take away from the general fund. I mean, that's the whole point of,
I know, but, I mean, at this point, do we even know that, I mean, her perpetuation fund can't sustain a full-time person out of that, is that correct?
Well, technically it could, there's $278,000 or $250,000
But it depends
sitting there,
on-
but yeah, you're right. But again, this is guidance for the budget hearings. Now, if we plug these numbers in and we wind up having our totals, and we have to adjust things a little differently or move some things around, that's all fair game. That's, if there's offsets that some of our department heads recommend, that they could maybe help pay towards that to lessen the cost, fair game. But we've got to have something to guide us through here so we know what kind of numbers we're putting into wage line items, and we can have some kind of foundation to work from in figuring those total numbers.
So your idea here would be to take 119, and so that would be a total of 150,000 basically, and hack away at the rest of the budget to get it within that 125 threshold.
Oh, I mean, that depends on what the council
See,
wants to do there, but
Here's the thing.
I'm not sure again what the recorder
We
has to
made
do
a
with this, but-
decision. We set a cap. And so I guess, I know there's leeway. I just want to stay within the parameters that we voted to stay within. You got a question?
Yeah, based on, again, giving courtesy to a lot of our people that are here for the general meeting, not coming back, and coming back later to the budget hearing, I'm gonna call a vote.
Okay, so all in favor of, Anton's motion to bring everyone, okay, is it up to the low point or up to the midpoint?
To the quarter point,
It's the-
25%.
Yeah, it's the low point and then halfway further to the midpoint.
Okay. Across the board,
Correct.
all in favor? All opposed?
I'm staying. I think we capped at 125,000. Let's take the 125,000 and work with it during the budget hearing. We've got so many people that's asking for so many things. I am not against the 100, because I made the motion for the 125,000 2 meetings ago or a meeting ago. I'm not against the people getting rate. I'm just saying, let's go through the hearing, the budget cycle, and let's see where we put this, what we cut, what we don't cut. And we're gonna give the 125,000. I understand. I'm just unclear totally about what we want to accomplish.
I'm gonna agree with Nick.
Yeah,
I
me
feel
too.
like that we will get there.
Right.
But in principle, we voted for 125,000.
Wasn't that what the meeting was for that was canceled, so that we would know going into budget hearings? I'm sorry to point out logic here, folks, my God.
I am still of the mindset of I want, and like I said, just because I voted against this, I'm talking about across the board. I want to take each department is unique, and each department, we still have to protect that general fund, and we need to go department by department and make sure that they can sustain this and try to do the best for that department. And so that's why I voted against it, not because and anybody that will talk to me and work, that I have worked diligently with each department trying to come up with avenues for them to have wage increases for their department. So I am not against raises at all. If anything I'm just the opposite, but I just don't know that we can do across the board blanket and have our finger on the pulse of our financial situation. So that's, anyway, let's move on to holiday pay. Sheila, can you give us a little rundown on what that is on old business?
Pass these around. This is EMS, 911, sheriff's is still pending. The 911 would be $1,238.62. EMS would be $2,419.66. And again, we're still working on the sheriff's ends of their holiday pay. So currently at the $3,658.29, if you would want to do a motion not to exceed a certain amount, but you would also have to determine where you're going to pay it from. It would be an additional appropriation, therefore it has to have a public hearing at the September meeting and then submitted to DLGF, so it would be the end of September before the holiday pay could actually be paid out.
And again, this is a one-time,
Right.
it's completing the fix, the temporary solution we had to back that first quarter of the prior year.
I'll make a motion that we approve the dispatch holiday pay and EMS holiday pay adjustments as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion made.
Does this include the sheriff as well?
But we need, yes, we're still working on the sheriff's.
This
this is
does not
amounts.
include the sheriff. Okay.
Right, but this is DMS and dispatch, and this would get that squared away. So we have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Who's second?
Okay.
Can you
I
clear?
did.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did.
Okay, Dawn, if you wanna, we'll move you up since you have, yeah.
The other two items, WTH claim and care of patients haven't been, so they would have been tabled anyway.
Okay,
I don't,
Oh,
Jim's had
All right.
a chance to
so they're
work on it.
tabled?
Yes.
We've had two appropriations requests. One is for maintenance agreement on our copy machine that would come out of user fees. That's a $700 amount. We're working with our 2022 budget to accommodate that. We've tried to make a change in our 2023 proposed budget to make sure that we don't have to come back in the future to ask for that. So this would be the one-time appropriation for the $700. And then we have a secondary issue. Investigator McBride has an opportunity. It's been approved by the commissioners. We've done it in the past. Our current technology systems, specifically his computer, compared to what he needs to download phones forensically, download computers forensically, to handle that type, we have an opportunity through the Internet Crimes Against Children grant cycle to purchase a computer. We would have to outlay that cash through the user fees, and then we'd be reimbursed after we actually procure that. Is that right? Correct. Okay. So those are the two things that we brought to you, so.
Motion to approve the prosecutor's request as presented.
I second that.
motion made by Chuck, seconded by Nick. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Okay. See you then. Thank you.
Okay. So probation department grant request approval.
It's LCC Grants. This is what's brought every year. It's from the court costs, from part of the judge orders court costs, and she orders like a drug fee. Half of it goes to the state, half of it stays in the county. LCC gets grants. They went last month to get them approved. So we went to the commissioners this is just the LCC asking you to release the money out of 1148, which is their fund number for the grants. And I think, do you guys have a copy of it? We got, okay. There is, I think it's about like $26,000 total in there. The total in that budget right now is about $40,000. So there's money. So every year we just take what was deposited the year before, ask entities and agencies for their applications, grant applications. And then this year it was fine because nobody asked any above what we had, so everybody got what they asked for this year. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. So they approve it, we go to the commissioners, we come to you, and then the agencies get it. I think it's the schools, the YMCA, us, Hamilton Center, there's a 4-H program that gets it. I mean, it's all kind of divided out.
Motion to approve the probation department's grant request.
Motion made by Chuck. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
seconded by Andy. Any questions?
This has been a normal procedure
Yes.
year after year.
Year after year, and it's really not probation, it's local coordinating council, I think, is the court, when the judge orders court costs and a drug fee. Part of that drug fee money, when the defendant pays it in the clerk's office, half of it goes to the state for drug orders of that, half of it stays in the county. So then every year, the county just has about $30,000 to give out to agencies in Owen County.
I don't mean probation as in probation, I mean, because that's what you presented.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you make sure.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Madam Chairman, a point of order. We never went over WTH claim or care of patients.
It is, it's been tabled.
Jim has not reviewed, I'm not sure about
Well, yeah,
the,
it'd be best on WTH if we just moved that to the September meeting.
Okay,
and the
Okay,
care
thank you. I did
patients.
not know. I did not hear that. My apologies.
We,
Sorry, I
we
should
did
read that.
skip over a public hearing though
And
for the
I'd say
additional
that-
appropriate. That does need to be handled
oh, yes.
before we go further.
I just wanted to get Dawn
Yeah.
in and out, so. Okay, so I am opening the public hearing for our additional appropriations.
You have a sheet in front of you that has the list of all of them. We can approve them all together. These were all approved at your last meeting to advertise for the public hearing today.
Motion to approve all the additional appropriations which were advertised.
Motion made, do I hear a second?
I do.
Seconded by Verl. Any discussion?
Are we talking A through zero or A through F?
No,
Okay.
we're talking about the public
There we go.
hearing in this section right here.
Right here,
Items that we put up last month for,
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for advertising.
that would have been under old business, basically.
Yep.
Okay, I'm good.
all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay.
Close the hearing.
Yes, I am now closing the public hearing. Sorry about that. Okay. Health Department grant requests.
They're all sticking together, I'm sorry. I'll talk
Thank you.
when I'm talking about. So, this is on our PHEP, our Public Health Preparedness Grant. It's a reimbursable grant by the state, it's for $25,000. What this does is, so basically, that's all I really have. You have any questions?
She had taken the grant request to the commissioners at their last meeting and it was approved. This is a regular annual grant that they get. The cycle is July the 1st to June 30th. And they've had it, I believe this is the 4th or 5th year.
It's the 4th year of a 5-year grant.
I make a motion, we accept it.
Second.
Presentation.
Motion made by Nick, seconded by Chuck. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, Public Defender additional appropriation requests. Sheila, do you know anything about that?
He is in the red in his line items, so he put in to do, transfers and additional appropriations and depositions and the new contract positions. Again, he currently is $5,970. It is in your packets, again, he increased it to the 25,000. That will carry him through the end of the year.
I'm sorry, what was the amount, what the line item, I can't seem to find that.
I'm having trouble finding it myself.
The line item is 1,002, Fund 233-30202,
And what was the amount,
25,000,
and where's that coming from?
the cash balance.
Is cash balance,
Yes.
motion to approve the additional appropriation for the public defender.
So, it's from, it says a general fund, so it's not necessarily his cash balance, it's the general fund.
It is the general fund, but he gets reimbursed by the state and he receives the funds in for the year. So when the monies come in, they go into the county general fund, and then from the county general fund are appropriated to reimburse his expenses.
Right, but that's not 100%, is it? That's only 40%, right?
Right.
Yes.
I'll maintain the motion.
So the question is, we're gonna pick up how much is this out of general?
At least up front.
Do I have,
At least up front, you know, because there will be a
25,000, we'll get in return 8,000.
Yeah, and that's 1,000 for deposition, so
Yeah.
26 total for the appropriation. The other is a transfer.
Yes.
There's still a motion on the floor.
Motion made by Chuck, is there a second?
there wasn't a second?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Well, my only concern was, would this be an area where the supplemental public defender fund maybe that's something that could be used to cover these kind of incidental, one-time catch-up type stuff?
In that case, wouldn't that just be a simple line transfer?
Well, it's a separate fund, so it'd be an appropriation from that fund, but he'd need to consult with us on that before I think that kind of decision would need to be made.
Well, that's a good thing. Did you second it?
No.
Good thing it died on the floor then.
I think with the emphasis on the general fund, maybe we should
Table
table it.
this.
Well, postpone until he returns. We can table it. If we table it, won't see it for another month.
I was gonna say, if you table it, I just want you to know that that particular line item will be running in the red until your September meeting.
So what
And
needs
funds
to,
are there, it's just, the cash balance is not in the red, just that fund line item is in the red.
Could we not just send him an email real quick and say, hey, maybe in the next 30 minutes? Oh, okay, Donna's on it. Okay, so let's just wait until later in the meeting.
okay, so we'll just move this, postpone it to down further. Okay. Okay, so we will move on to the circuit court additional appropriation request.
Good morning. Basically, the $100 that we're asking were to be transferred from the general into our interpreter fund. That is money that has been reimbursed by the state for a grant we have. So we're just basically asking, the grant's already been reimbursed, or already paid it through the grant. We're just asking it to be transferred back into our interpreter
What was the total?
line,
$100.
about $100.
Motion to approve this.
I second.
Presented.
Motion made by, oh.
Go ahead, no, go ahead, because this is just something I'll probably be in here on a regular basis or one of the judges, because I have to submit for the grant reimbursement once a month, so.
Okay.
Apologize for that.
Okay, so
So we have a motion.
motion by Chuck,
I second.
seconded by Nick. Any more questions? All those in favor? Motion carried.
The second thing, I had originally filed it as an additional appropriation to come from our grand pettit jurors fund to go into our supply line. Yesterday, after speaking with the judge a little bit more about it, we decided that we would like to transfer $4,016 from our lodging and meals of jurors into our supply line. We had to replace the mixer and several other items in the Circuit 1 courtroom yesterday for our digital recording equipment. Basically, for about 2.5 weeks, we have not been able to use Circuit 1 court because the recording would just stop in the middle. So they've been having to have a lot of hearings in the small courtroom. So basically, we had to have it fixed, with jury trials coming up and things like that. So that's what that money is for. So, and currently, we have that money in the lodging and meals of jury. If we need to if we start having some juries and we run out of money, we do have a jury grand petted fund that we can.
2,600.
Yeah.
Motion to approve the 2,600 transfer requested by the circuit court.
I'll second that.
Made by Chuck, seconded by Anton. Any questions?
Thought it was 4,016.
What did I say? Yeah, 4,016.
Yeah, we didn't need to,
What amount did I say?
do we need to change that in the motion? It's not
Sorry?
2,600, it's 4,000,
Yeah, the amended number, 4,000.
4,016.
That's what I thought you said in the beginning.
That's what I thought
When you
too.
said
Okay, I wasn't sure.
26, I thought you said it in the beginning. but-
Who knows?
Well, the fund number's 2,600, that's where that
There we go.
Thank you.
That's
That's what
the
the,
fund she was talking about there.
Okay, so with the amendment, we've got a motion on the floor and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in
favor,
favor?
just trying to help us move along.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, PSAP lip transfer request.
Fortunately, Kathleen is at home with COVID.
Oh,
She
no.
presented the transfer of funds. She's taking it from the PSAP lit fund, 1235, to the 911 fund, 1222, in the amount of $5,000. And it's the overtime is exhausted because they've had several people out on quarantine.
Yeah.
Motion to approve the dispatch request.
Motion made by Chuck, is there a second? Seconded by Anton. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, treasurer additional appropriation requests.
Did Diane make it, I think she's coming this afternoon.
This afternoon, she did message me and say
Okay.
she's not gonna be able to be here.
Again, she has an additional appropriation in there, for $650 out of the elected officials
I
training
think
fund.
based on what it's for, we should go ahead and approve
Is that a motion?
it. Yes.
Second.
Motion made by Andy, seconded by Chuck. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, recorder's perpetuation fund ordinance.
Loretta has already provided a signed copy of the affidavit that is with that. You guys will have the ordinance that Jim's gonna read.
The affidavit does not have to be read, the ordinance does. The auditor will provide the ordinance number, but it's ordinance number 2022, and we'll fill that in. Whereas the Owen County Council has received a sworn affidavit from the Owen County Recorder pursuant to Indiana Code 36-2-710.2B, in order that the recorder may pay office expenses of the Recorder's Office from the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund for the budget year of 2023. And whereas the Owen County Council wishes to approve the Recorder's annual request made pursuant to the sworn affidavit, so that the funds from the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund may be used for certain office expenses as requested by the Recorder. Now therefore be it ordained by the Owen County Council pursuant to Indiana Code 36-2-7-10C, that the request made by the Owen County Recorder to use funds from the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund to pay office expenses as indicated by the Recorder's sworn affidavit is approved. This ordinance shall also serve as the council's approval of sufficient money from the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund to cover any specific requests made by the Recorder. This ordinance shall be full force and from its passage, approval, recording, and publication as provided by law, passed and adopted by the Owen County Council at its regular meeting held on today's date, month of 2022. The Owen County Council, Paula Chesser, President, Earl Keith, Vice President, Anton Neff, Amy K. Spear, Chuck Hess, Nick Robertson, and Andrew Wood would be attested by Sheila Reeves, Auditor.
Is this something that does it still require publication, Jim?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I make a motion, we go ahead and authorize the auditor to publicize it so that we can vote on it at our next meeting.
I'll second that.
No,
I misunderstood the question. You can vote and approve, it's just required to be publicized after the vote.
My apologies.
Yeah,
In that case, I include approval of the
Yeah, that's fine.
To which number? I'm assuming 2022-0.
My list is downstairs. I forgot we had an ordinance today.
In that case,
We're
if they
gonna
do the
assign the
motion,
number.
go to the next number.
Yes.
So motion was made by Chuck, seconded by Anton. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Get to work, Loretta.
Okay, Highway Department additional appropriation requests.
There are 2 additional appropriations included in your packet. I'm assuming he's still wanting them, Jim.
I don't,
This is what was turned in, again, the 100,000 from Fund 1173 to 23,700 and 50,000, 1176, 22. These will have to be advertised in a public hearing at your September meeting if approved today.
Adequate funds in those accounts?
Yes,
Make a motion.
I'm sorry, clarification, these have to be
Advertised.
advertised prior to approval.
right. Today you're just approving.
Just making sure,
public hearing.
considering the last one we just did.
Make a motion to accept the request with the advertisement.
Second.
Motion made by Nick, seconded by Chuck. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, building department salary and hourly workday increase request.
Alright, so I'm requesting to take the inspector from 22 hours to 28 hours a week. And change the base rate from up to midpoint, which is the 1843. The reason for the change is Rick Smeltzer is wanting to retire. So to advertise for the new position, we'd like to advertise at a higher rate and then they could, the next person would then be required to come into the office and spend a few hours a day.
Well, I appreciate the request, Madam President, but I think we should probably forego until we have a more comprehensive outlook on 23 throughout budget hearings.
Does,
Well, in my budget, I'm requesting for a full-time position, so this is only adding 4 hours a week to his current time. It wouldn't add any more, and currently, Rick is at a base rate, his with longevity is $17, so it's not actually increasing it by much, so.
My concern isn't the rate or doing it, I'm just saying in principle, if you're wanting to raise something to midpoint, we're looking at that across the board right now for
Right.
just another position.
But I'm outside of the general fund, I have to fund it, so based on my, what I have in my accounts at any point in time, so I'm not based on what the general fund can sustain, so.
so, have you, I mean, do you feel like this is a sustainable,
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
comfortable with it, yes.
And, so you're wanting to, take your inspector from, did you, what is it,
It's currently at 22 hours a week.
22 hours?
And go just 4 hours more to
28.
28, which he'd still be part-time, still be technically part-time, so it's not adding anything extra, no insurance, no nothing like that. But to get someone in here that, you know,
And it does not take out of the general fund,
it
correct?
doesn't, it won't
Right.
come out of the general fund.
And that's my, I mean, I think that's my main concern is, I mean, we've gotta keep that general fund growing. But that's why I have felt like, you know, to work with each department. And if you've got the funds within that and it's not gonna touch the general fund, then that was my, that's my concern. So I mean, you've looked at it, you can sustain it, and it's not gonna take out of the general fund. That were my two main concerns. What is, I mean, if you didn't go to the mid-rate, what is the rate right now that you would?
15.
15, so
Yeah,
we'll
it's
take it from 15 to
15,
17?
Yeah, 15.345, and he's currently at 17.7 something.
So you would
with
take it,
longevity.
what would your, okay, if you're bringing it to the midpoint, I mean, I know he's 17, what would it
Yeah.
bring the rate to?
18.43, which is what was on Anton's.
In the letter that she provided in your packet.
But he's retiring at the end of the year.
No, he's retiring as soon as we
Yeah.
find
He's retiring
somebody
very
to
soon.
replace him.
What brought this all about is that Rick has said that he was wanting to leave sooner than later. They didn't feel that the 15.345 was an acceptable rate for a building inspector with the qualifications. She did discuss it with the commissioners and that ends too. They felt they would find a more qualified applicant if they were to increase it, and they went with the midpoint.
I mean.
Rick has given him someone,
within,
And
like,
we're
basically-
sustain that. I
that's
make a motion,
my
we go
two.
ahead and approve, the request from the building department.
Motion made by Chuck, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Nick. Any other questions?
I do have, because in your budget, you're asking for a full-time employee.
right,
Now, this is something totally different. This is, you're dealing with the vacancy that you're gonna have here soon.
yes.
Okay, I have to say this, I don't know how you're gonna get a qualified building inspector for that, the liability factor on the county, but I'm absolutely for that.
Any other? Okay, let's call for a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm gonna abstain this time. I'd rather wait till we get,
I'm
if she's gonna ask for 40 hours, I think-
We talk about the.
Yeah, I'm adding to 35, just 35, same as I am.
yeah.
We would be.
I don't wanna vote for this and then, that's just my opinion.
So,
Well, if you don't vote for it, it's going to pass, because currently it's 3-1.
No, oh,
Yeah.
it's,
Oh,
are you abstaining as well?
I'm gonna abstain.
And you're abstaining?
yes.
And then Anton's a no,
Correct.
so motion passed. Okay.
I don't mean, is there a way I can, they have people on the jail. I was sort of come back down.
This is the public.
Public defender,
Yeah,
okay, let's
yeah,
go back to
people
that,
on
yeah.
jail, long video
Yes.
waiting before we come back out. That's okay, I mean, it's.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay. I believe I have appropriation, basically transferring funds from my supplemental fund over to my general, or my contract, non-contract, and deposition funds.
I think the question was, is didn't you have another fund that we could possibly pull it from instead of taking out of the general fund?
Yeah, it was from my supplemental fund.
Oh, it was from your
Yes,
supplemental
yes, from my
fund?
supplemental fund, that's what I wanted to come out of. Yes,
Where was it? Okay, never mind. If it's coming out of your supplemental fund, I make a motion, we go ahead and approve his
No.
request.
no, I wouldn't wanna say that the 20,000 that's going towards the salaries, we did that last year, we're doing it this year. I did put in my budget that that's out of the general fund for next year's budget.
But
because
that's
it's
no
not the-
change.
No change. But it's basically, we've been paying for it for 2 years, and we kind of phased it in, and that's what we agreed to do was out of the budget. But this year, I'm paying it out of my supplemental fund, all of these funds are out of my supplemental.
For some reason, the forms did not indicate
Okay,
that.
sorry.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
I may have filled it wrong.
Some kind of miscommunication.
No worries.
Yeah,
Well, then I'll call.
That's good then,
yeah, it actually, you guys will make money off of it.
Thank you very much.
She'll reimburse it.
I've already made the motion.
Oh, okay.
We need a second.
I'll second.
Well.
My question is, you're saying what you're asking for is gonna come out of general 23?
In 23,
But this is
not
for,
all of that. The one that I'm asking for $20,000 to be transferred over for salary this year, which if you remember back to last year, I said, when we went to hire somebody new, we lost an employee. We couldn't find anybody qualified for what we were paying. We just couldn't do it. We agreed for 2 years to pay out of the supplemental fund to pay that, and then we were gonna phase it in for the third year, it was gonna come out of the general fund. That's not this year that I'm asking for, it's the next year to pay for
We
that.
will see that in the budget.
It is my budget increase, yes, just, I didn't want to be transparent about it.
But this is for this year. Okay, there's a motion made by Chuck, seconded by Anton. Any other questions? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. See you this afternoon.
Who did you give the second to?
Oh, well,
I could.
You.
yeah.
Me? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, auditor's employee request.
I don't even know what to say now. Been all over the place. Again, as you all know, I had originally asked for a new position, to come in and help, and it was tabled at a couple different meetings. Since then, my payroll deputy has turned in her resignation. I am not getting applications and things in. I sent you all an email on Friday. Again, I think it's the pay rate. We, at the time on Friday, again, not knowing, it's more important to have a payroll deputy. We'll worry about a backup and possibly talk about it when we get into the budget hearings. But I do feel that that position, which has been combined with the payroll, which last year or in February in 2021, we were trying to get Paycor. That did not happen, but we still lost the position. Sherry inherited both the insurance side of it and the payroll deputy as well, is doing two jobs. And I feel it is worth the midpoint, or, you know, again, in the letter, I used it comparable to what the highway employees were given at the last month too. So I'm respectfully asking for a pay increase for that position, in order to make it worth and getting somebody in there that really truly wants to do the job and is gonna stick with it. If not, I don't know what we're gonna do. We are between a rock and a hard place right now and trying to get somebody trained. Sherry and Chris, thankfully, both have offered to help out in the transition as long as we can. It's the only way we're gonna make it through. We have an option to bring in Lao payroll program, but that's an expense of $35,000, and you would still need a payroll person entering the same information just as you would have if it was Paycor. I do feel it would be beneficial because it is in the Lao system. It's a complete financial report with everything. If not, we're still inputting those numbers. So
Now Sheila, do you have a line item for the individual?
I would be using some out of the general fund, but I also have two other funds that I can pay out of. We have the 1150 endorsement, auditor's endorsement fee fund. And then we also have a sales disclosure fund, number 1131. I would have enough in both of those funds to pay for the rest of the year with a salary increase, and it would pay for at least a third, maybe even half for next year's fund as well.
Now, this is the position that you offered to give up for Paycor,
Yes,
and we never got Paycor.
we never got paid.
So you've been going shorthanded with that.
Again, Sherry inherited both of the positions.
So Sheila, are you,
I was gonna make a motion. I'm really concerned, because I don't know if we all debate this during budget hearing or go ahead now, but I'm gonna make a motion to go ahead and grant Sheila's request. Mayor.
I'll second for discussion.
so my discussion point is that we said 125,000, and based on the last vote, that, you know, my concern is that we're gonna hack away at that number.
The last one on the building.
No, yeah, I understand, just principle wise, and then this one is the general fund. I want, I guess, a big picture outlook before hitting individual departments, because I don't feel like that's been done. So I'm gonna abstain.
Let me ask this question, Sheila, that person is in your line item and it's been funded for 2022? Or did we just,
What it currently is at,
That is
pay difference increase would come from the endorsement fund, the sales disclosure fund, and I probably, out of those two funds, would not need any more out of the general fund this year. It would just be for the 2023 that we would have to add some difference.
So this, I mean, what we're discussing here is Sherry's current position and increasing the pay. You're not talking about adding another person at this point, you're talking.
Right, just the hourly rate.
Right, and, so since, I'm gonna abstain because of family members, right?
She has a family member that has applied for it, so.
So I'm going to abstain from this.
Is this sustainable year to year, Sheila?
We would have to increase the general fund for part of the 2023 and moving forward. I mean, I can always have endorsement and sales disclosure, there's just not an exact dollar amount that is received each year in those two funds. We used part of that fund this year, you guys approved to do the position with the treasurer's office. Due to them not having people in that, there's funds left in that fund as well that went on.
Because I'm having difficulty finding it in this huge packet that we have, what was the total number?
For the added.
For adding the added expense for the rest of the year?
I didn't do an exact number because I didn't know what you guys amount you were going through. Was it 1950, I believe, that I asked for it to be increased to?
So it's
Between the 18.
Currently it's what,
15,797.
797, okay.
I think Andy had a good point there, but let me ask Anton something. Anton, where does this, if we're gonna work this $125,000 into pay, how will this position and this increase affect that $125,000? Will it be able to be taken out of that, added to that, or is this gonna be an outside?
It's a complete reset, to be honest.
Okay.
We're back to square one, so whatever you feel is appropriate.
But I mean, if we give that, and we work with these other individuals, and we bring them up to somewhere between low, did you say, and mid, somewhere near.
Well, this position was in that original proposal, and
This
it
position,
wouldn't have taken it to the 19.5, but it would have taken a pretty decent step in that direction, so.
okay.
Oh, and, go
But
ahead.
she's offsetting too.
My
for the
concern
record.
is that we have individually increased certain departments this year, which has brought us to the point to where in order to even that out, the 125,000 won't even do that. So now, in giving raises, and Sheila, I'm telling you, no one deserves it more than you. That's not my point. I just want to, if we've set aside a certain amount of money and we keep going down this road, then we're just hacking away. And that's concerning to me.
I guess what concerns me is it is payroll, which is a very important position. And how many applications do you have so far, Sheila?
5. We did 2 interviews and 2 are non-hireable. Pending the
We're
annual
without a
pay.
payroll clerk, gonna be. Anyway, like I said, I'm just discussing, I'm gonna abstain from the vote.
Like Anton said, it is already included in his $119,061 amount that he has already provided
Some
for
of it, yeah.
the 2023, and I do have 2 other funds that we can use toward it.
Allow me to point out that there was an earlier motion to go ahead and carry that for a 0.25, and that was shot down. So anybody discussing even $125,000 level at this point is arguing apples and oranges, because there is no level at this point, because no meeting was held and that motion was shot down. So any discussion of that is ridiculous. We are now taking it purely on the presentation of each person and each department.
And I won't harm for or against, I'll abstain. So
So-
I'll go ahead and call for a vote.
So all those in favor of Sheila's request?
No, I'll do it.
Those against? And those, Are you abstaining?
Yes,
Okay, 3 abstain, 2 for, 1 against.
That carried.
And we're going to use the midpoint.
Well, that did not pass. You need a majority vote, so.
They abstained.
Yeah, but, yeah.
You still need
They abstained.
you still need a majority vote of members.
I want clarification from Robert's rules right now, because.
This is where
they
Jim might
abstained.
come in handy. Technically, the other votes where we had 3 wasn't enough because you had 1 abstention and 1 against, so.
gonna need some
I don't know.
Well, then we need to get clarification.
Yeah, it might be a coffee moment or a break maybe, but
That sounds good.
Might be a whiskey moment, I will not trip over this.
when you've got a board of 6 people and you only had 2 of them vote in favor of it, that's not enough for the motion to
So
pass.
what's the rules on that, Jim?
This I was not expecting.
It's unusual, we'll give, you know, but it should be double checked,
Yeah,
yeah.
we need to find that out then.
Yeah, if we can just double check Jim on the other votes as well, where we had as high as 3 votes on one of them, but it was still technically not a majority. And then this most recent one was probably, I have to say, probably the most unique vote I've ever seen on the council.
That probably is true.
I would have
2-1
voted if I.
2-1-3, 2-1-3, right?
So are we gonna wait on that, or are we going on and waiting for the,
It's up to 15 minutes, so
Okay.
whatever you like.
so.
I think,
Motion to take a 10-minute break. We've been going since 8, and it's almost 2 hours.
Okay,
What's the difference at this point?
10-minute break.
Yes.
Oh, good deal.
Okay, next on our agenda is the Sheriff's Department salary proposal.
I did find my notes, Polly.
All right,
Good morning, council.
Good morning.
good morning.
One minute before we get started, please. First of all, I want to thank God for just everything, especially all of his blessings. Also want to thank him for, I've had the opportunity to be sheriff for almost 8 years and work with you guys for, it's been 13, 14 years. Appreciate all your commitments, the commissioners as well, Jim back there, auditor. It's been a true blessing for me, it's been an honor, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And, a quick note, thanks for all the stuff.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, have lunch tomorrow at high noon, so. Everybody's had the proposal, for over a week. I'm sure everybody's looked at it. Probably got some questions, maybe some concerns. You've read the letters. I'm not gonna sit here and beat a dead horse. Everybody knows what's in this proposal. I want to thank Chief Deputy Matt Miller for his hard work. We've spent a lot of nights, working on this, and, he's laid out this presentation. I can think things, he puts it on the paper, so a lot of times we talk, he puts it on paper, so all of this has come from him, so if there's any errors, it's all his fault.
I knew that was coming. The whole time he was talking, I was.
Anyway, the council asked sometime for us to put together a proposal that would not affect your general fund. And this does not. It affects other things, of course, but not your general fund, so that's a good thing. I've been an advocate for the jail for many, many years, and I still am. I think it's a necessary thing we need to do. To get a jail, we know we've got some situations going on with our current jail, that's not gonna change, it's gonna get worse. But if you don't have employees to run your facilities or work your roads, none of it's any good anyway. So these are the issues that, me and Matt got together along with council members to address. So here we go. If anybody has any questions, the only way for this to work is when you combine everything together in a total package. You can't leave anything out, because if you do leave one thing out, the proposal's no good. It just doesn't work. In order for us to fund, the increases that you have before you, on, I guess, be sheet 3, the savings that we're going to be saving is, $40,000 from vehicle rotation, $90,000 from the SRO, school resource officers that we get back every year. It is under the council's discretion to, the correctional facility money, which Jim has pointed out, we get $800-some thousand a year, $71,000 a month. The council has the discretion to spend 20% of that on payroll, which is did some, last year for a period of time, or a year before. So it'd be $170 from that. We have $20,000 from our medical, our contract plan, for medical is about $30,000 this year. 2 years ago in the budget, we increased that. You gave us a little cushion of $20,000, for incidental expenses. We're good with our contract amount that we have, so we have $20,000 for inmate medical. The total funds available towards, deputy raises and increases is $320,000. You just can look through all this, I'm sure you already have. The total cost for everything that we have laid out for you is $308,646.65. That's what it takes. Now, everybody says, oh my Lord, that's a lot of money, that's a lot of money. Yeah, it is a lot of money. But you've read the letters. You understand what the officers are saying, you understand what we've talked about in years past. Your biggest issue, and I'm sure your biggest hurdle is going to be, you're taking $170,000 from your correctional facility money for your jail. Absolutely. You are. It's a hit. We understand that. We understand it's gonna take all the money that we can get for the jail project. But take a look back at what you've lost. Front page tells you right out of the gate. We've lost 14 certified officers and over 60 jail officers. Boils down to pay. The money is just not there.
Every one of those losses boils down to pay.
Except for a couple, we do have a couple that left because of, personal reasons. The biggest, I'd say 90% of Andy is due to pay. We're down to, we got another officer leaving on the 16th of this month. Our base salary is $41,000. We're trying to increase that to the $51,000. Just so we can retain the employees that we have and recruit. The last two hirings that we've had, the applications don't even exist. We can't even get nobody to fill out an application to come over here, and not $41,000.
Sam, on this inmate medical, we give you the raise, do you see, you've set 20,000 of that aside into this budget, or into this request. Do you see that changing, over the next 2 years?
It'll make it, yeah, I mean, we can't predict anything, what's gonna happen in McMedic. You still do have a little bit of cushion, because the amount that we had, in there was $159,000. We still have a little bit of cushion to use for incidental
You're looking
expenses.
at 308,000, and you're showing 320,000, so there seems to be a cushion there, is that right?
There is a cushion, there is some money available, yes.
Chuck?
And this is also, I'd like to remind, it's an excellent proposal. The people who are worried about the 170,000 out, which comes from the tax we raised for the jail, that's eventually gonna have to come out anyway, because you're gonna have to pay for people to operate the jail, period. Okay? This is absolutely ludicrous to even discuss that portion. Let's go ahead and begin it now, because I'm gonna tell you the truth, folks, the economy's not gonna get any better. And if we're gonna have officers that we can keep, we better do this now before the economy really gets even worse. We've already had 2 quarters of GDP in negative. That is automatically a recession, folks, and it's not gonna get any better. This is the last opportunity we have to try and maintain a level of competence and professionalism within our sheriff's department. Therefore, I make a motion, we go ahead and accept the sheriff's proposal as presented.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Nick. I just want to point out, I think if we took all of the money that we've lost in not only uniforms, but in training, I mean, these what we're doing with this pay, we're bringing in officers, we're paying money for their uniforms, which I think I hear is like $4,000 or $5,000 a piece. We're paying for 15 weeks of training, and then they're taking that. We've paid to get them up and going, and then they go somewhere else, and we've got to stop that bleeding.
Are we recouping the uniforms when people leave?
What we can, we try. The vest is specifically tailored for the individual, so it's kind of hard to reuse that, which is expensive. The uniforms themselves, we keep the uniforms for, if anyone needs something, that's the first place you go, is to the uniform closet to see what's there. So yes, we do keep it, but if something fits, you wear it.
I also want to point out that we're looking at getting, we're losing them at a rate that we're down to possibly, one person on the night shift and with no backup. And if something happened to them, I don't want to put a dollar amount on a person's life, but if everybody wants to talk about dollar amounts, the thousands of thousands of dollars that we would pay in benefits to I just want I think this is very important. So we've got a motion made by Chuck, seconded by Nick. Anybody else?
I
have any
wanna ask,
questions?
on the rotation in one car, how will that affect us as far as down the road, you think?
Chief. As far as losing the one car, is that what you're asking?
Rotation, yeah.
I mean, we've got some options that we can look at. Here recently, we've been auctioning all of our vehicles that we're transferring out of service. And hopefully that trend will say, we've been getting pretty good money from those, enough that if we auction 3 vehicles, that it pretty much buys us another vehicle. So we do have some options and some means to get that one vehicle. You know, we discussed earlier some options and talked with Anton about maybe, you know, the potential of completely doing away with that line, trying to fund it completely ourselves. And I don't know how sustainable that would be, but I feel very confident with one vehicle that we can sustain that.
I think the rotation is very, very important.
We worked really hard on that.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
And that's the only,
So,
Yeah, I was kind of-
guys, my concern here, just like the others, is I wanna look at the whole budget and your whole budget before making a decision. Clearly, I think you guys, need a raise, but I want, as I think I told you, Sam, and, I know Polly and I, chatted yesterday, I wanna look at the implications. So, we voted, at some point, I assume, to hold back a certain amount of money for the jail project whenever we raise taxes, knowing that we can't do that again, you know, and I think Jim mentioned it this morning, you're there, so it takes revenue to help. So there's an amount of money that we need to, give raises with. I just don't know, you know, if it's this amount, and I wanna hear more, so that's why I'll be abstaining, on Chuck's motion, and hopefully get a chance to address it during your portion of the.
Well, and I appreciate that, I really do, but make sure you understand, and I know you all understand, this does not affect your general fund, the council.
No, I understand it doesn't affect the general fund. What it does affect, though, is the jail project.
Sure.
And I wanna hear more about a timeline. You know, how does it affect the timeline that we need to take? And if anybody's willing to speak to that, you know, now, that's great. I understand you got a question. I just wanna hear more.
And I wanna add something, when about November 14th gets here, Yums will have over $250,000 in your jail housing fund. Okay, jail housing cannot be used for payroll. It's the reason we have to take the 20% from the correctional facility. Jail housing can be used towards your jail project. Okay, so you'll have $250,000 November, whenever our last gets here.
Okay.
We get $85,000 every year jail housing from the state every year. Now, you can't allocate all that to the jail project, but you can allocate a chunk. We're gonna be needing 10,000 of that, for added, meal cost, for our budget, that, you know, coming up in 2023.
So with that, what is the true cost that is going to be affected out of we first said that we wanna save $1 million for the jail, okay? So what's the true cost of this $308,000 if you use the jail housing money, to put towards that?
Well, you know, I see what you're saying. We still have to utilize the 20% of the jail correctional facility money for payroll, the $170,000.
Because we can't.
Has to be utilized. Once you do that, that leaves that $170,000 in your public safety fund. That money's not being spent, okay? We have to utilize that. But your jail housing, which you'll have $255,000 in November, you can we all agree, we can all come to a number of that money that you can say, can we allocate 100,000 of that towards the jail project? Absolutely. You can't take it all because we may have incidental expenses. But there's a big chunk of that you can use to, I kind of like to say, put back in the correctional facility money, so to speak, and that's exactly what you can do. But we have to take the 170 from correctional facility for payroll to use strictly for payroll, which state statute gives us that authority to do so.
Okay, so
I don't wanna rob the jail project money, I don't understand that, but we're gonna have to take some here to take some back here to put back,
so I guess the big question for me is how much will we be putting back towards the jail project?
Well, that's something we'll have to make a decision. I mean, I don't know why you couldn't allocate $100,000 from jail housing money. Then that would, still, you're taking 170 here, let's say you're gonna allocate the 100,000 from jail housing, then really $70,000 you're taking from correctional facility money. $70,000 is not gonna make or
So
break the
if
jail
we
project.
allocated, if we said as a group that we're gonna hold back $1 million, okay? Which I think we did. My question is, where are we at on that?
Well, we've got over $1 million now in correctional facility money right now.
So you're saying we're on track?
We are on track, but you're going to take, if you pass this proposal, the 170, but you have jail housing money over here to use to offset your difference. See what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Anton, or you got it? Makes sense?
Chuck, got it.
No, we got a question on.
Okay. It's real simple. Either way, when we get the jail project completed, 20% of that is still can be used for the jail wages and salaries, okay? What he's effectively doing is he's pulling that now because he's got the officers to pay for. So that comes out of there, and then that money is now freed up to offer the appropriate compensation to have more officers qualified to stick around. Now remember, in the proposal, it kicks it up to $51,000. That's $2,000 less than the starting position in Monroe, which we have lost many officers to over the last 20 years. I think it's absolutely reasonable. He's got more than enough to begin. If the amount was 1 million and we got 1.1, we are not taking away. It's not like he's going into that 1.1 million. This is from here on out. And you're gonna use that money anyway, because you're gonna wanna take it from there, so that the people can be afforded to work in the new jail, because we're gonna have to have a couple more.
And it doesn't matter if we have a new jail and we don't have good qualified officers. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
Good point. Sam, out of your jail housing fund, is there any money there that could be used for this vehicle we're losing?
If I buy a vehicle for the jail staff or whatever, yes.
Not for a road officer?
You know, I'd have to get permission from State Board of Council, which they've allowed permission before. And if that's the case, what we'll do, haven't heard back from them, because I understand what his scenario is. You have to realize we do have $320,000 available to us. We're asking to spend $308,000. We could just say, let's just commit to $320. That would give us an extra $12,000 to vehicle rotation. We can make up that difference that we're losing. The one thing, and everybody here in this county is extremely important. Everybody's job, everybody. Public safety is an issue. And you all know, and I don't want to be unfair to anybody else. The game has changed with law enforcement. It's not like it used to be. And a lot of you don't see it, and I'm sure you have, because you've had boots on the ground when you was in the service and for Navy. You just don't realize what they're going through on the streets. I don't want to bring, I'm not using that as an excuse. It's reality. They just killed a 24-year-old kid up in Elwood. They blowed his brains out. Every traffic stop we go on is a potential, that's it, situation. If we cannot keep the men that we have and women and retain them and recruit better officers, you will lose the officers that we have now. The count, look where we came in 2015, a lot of you was on this boat with us. Look what we did in these last 7.5 years to get to where we're at. Appreciated by everybody that was involved, including the taxpayers. We cannot, I've always told my guys, I don't care if you regroup, but don't you ever back up. You make your stand, you draw the line in the sand, and you fight right then. I'm not backing up. I know it's important for everybody to get raises, and it needs to, these guys' lives are on the line for your freedoms. And I take it serious.
Based on what he said, I call no.
I do have some questions.
Sure.
And I know we've worked closely on this, and I want to give some credit as well to the sheriff and chief deputy because they put a lot of work on this. And I've helped them with some technical parts to this. Our communication got cut here, and I didn't get all of my answers to questions, so I want to go over those. First off, one of your cost offsets is $90,000 for the SRO. My only concern with that is we already count that $90,000 in as far as revenue into that fund. So we can't count it again, so can you talk more about that particular part?
That's paid out of our public safety fund, we pay the payroll.
Correct. But the revenue is already counted in on the income side currently. So we can't.
You get that reimbursed.
True.
But where does it go when it is reimbursed?
It goes into his fund.
It goes back to the public safety.
But it already is. So what I'm saying is, and I'm not trying to poke a hole on a $90,000 of your income you're counting here, but it's already in there. So we can't, it's not new $90,000 to help pay for it is what I'm trying to say. So we need to verify that.
I guess I'll just kind of disagree with you.
So how so?
Because you budgeted to pay these 2 SRO officers out of the public safety fund budget.
Yes.
You pay that. If the school was paying for it, the $90,000 right all the time, it wouldn't be in our budget. We wouldn't have to budget, but we do.
Right, but
then they give us the 90,000.
They're giving us the 90,000 in revenue, so you can't just count the expense, you gotta count, it's already there on the revenue side. So if you put $90,000 as new revenue to pay for the part of this plan, that's 90,000 that really doesn't exist, is what I'm saying. So we need to clarify that part of it. The other is, in your projections for courthouse security, your hours were off. You had 971 hours, but it's really 2,000 and some hours, so there's several thousands of dollars there that we need to make sure we include in the cost. If you look on your first page, it says special deputy times 2, it's got 971 hours, but we actually have a lot more hours for court security than 971. So that might need to be refigured. The other thing is, when I plug in the wage targets, like if I take the dollar amounts per hour that's being proposed, and I plug those in place of the current amounts we've got, that alone comes up to pretty close to your total now. But those numbers don't include the 30% for the police retirement. So the cost, I think we need to double check our cost numbers again to make sure that we're accounting for every wage component and every benefits component and have an exact dollar amount bottom line.
Which number were you talking about?
So on your proposal,
Yes.
page 3 or 4, where you start to get into the total cost. Right now, you've got that at $308,646.65, is that correct?
Yes.
And that includes the combination of everything. You've got benefits in there, which includes police retirement.
Yes.
You've got the rank updates, the hours changes, all that. But if I take the wage targets that you have in your proposal, and I plug those into our system and do the difference, the wage, the FICA, and the PERF where applicable, all of those parts, they total about 300,000 by themselves. So we'd have to add in the cost to my number of the retirement package, which would be about 30% of the deputies part. And that would put you above this 308 is what I'm saying.
So I guess I'm confused because I added retirement into this.
It's into the package.
Right, but the number I've got is wages only plus FICA. So if I add in the cost projection for the police retirement, that total, the actual total is higher than 308.
What is the total?
Well, I have to do 30% on, what is your increased amount?
The hourly increased amount?
The total for the deputies.
51,875.
While he's calculating,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chuck.
You got me mixed up there, and time that thing was.
Ah,
I'm getting back on track, all right.
Well, you're thinking of that.
Two points, one, deals where we're selling the extra vehicles, it's actually working. I do gov deals, so I watch them go, and they do go for good money, okay? Number two, that $90,000, Anton, is the same, let's take consideration what we just did with the Defender's Office, where we get a return of 40% based on his number. Well, we're getting 100% back because the schools are paying for it. So at some time during the year, we are getting paid back for that money. Nobody's adding it to his total. What we're saying is that is money that now can be used when it is paid back to us. So if it happens later in the year, great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's
see.
usable. It's not at the beginning because we pay for it at the beginning. But at the end, when reconciliation occurs, it does handle what we can do.
yeah, but here's the catch. We already do use it and get it. It's not.
Where do we use that at?
It's put as revenue into this fund. So we already get it, and it's already accounted for, and it's already spoken for, because we use it to pay those people.
But
So you can't say you have 90,000 new dollars.
Nobody's saying new.
Well, that's what's in the proposal offsetting the cost. That's where it's at. That's the concern.
I get that.
well, if the wording needs to be changed to usable funds or money, then maybe we just change the wording because you have the 90,000.
It doesn't change the dollars, though. You still need to come up with $90,000 to fill the hole, because it's not new money. We're already getting it. We've gotten it for years, right? It's revenue we currently get. It's not new revenue, it's current revenue. And that's why I'm saying we need to double check that, because if again, I'm not criticizing, I'm just bringing this up because 90,000 is a major hole if you're trying to pay for something. And if we're already getting the money, how can we count that as new money to go towards the raises? You see what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying. I disagree with your term new. I would like to know, I mean,
well, let's work on that. So new.
where does his fund now sit? His wage fund?
Well, it's a part of 1170, that's the current, but it comes in as miscellaneous revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So there's income tax, which is the biggie. Then there's miscellaneous revenue. And this school amount, when they give us the money, no matter where it ends in the year, we deposit that correct into his fund. So we're already getting, that 90,000 is already our money.
I get that, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, but in the
But
proposal.
you're saying that it's already been used.
What he's saying is
I don't recall where it's being used at, because when we set the budget, we use it initially as the SRO.
Right, and we pay for that in his budget. It's a part of his
I get that.
wages, yes.
But when it comes back, it's not tagged or flagged to pay something else.
No, but in his proposal, he's saying, I can pay for this $308,000 plan
Yes,
by using 90,000
Yes.
from that.
yes.
But there is no 90,000 new that he can use towards this. He already
It's not
gets.
new, it's coming back to us.
That's not how that works.
Oh, so we pay the 90,000 and it's gone. That's what you're telling me, it's
No.
gone.
No, we pay the 90,000 in wages.
Yes,
We get the 90,000 in revenue.
yes.
It's canceled out. He's putting 90,000 as something to put towards the cost of the new money.
Okay, I get that, but when you tell me that doesn't make sense from a wallet standpoint. If I pay $90 for a tank of gas and my employer gives me $90 to cover that, that means I've got $90.
I think
That
it's
means
a
you have
wash.
zero. It's a wash.
I
To put it like.
Yeah, but that's not.
You don't have $90 more to fill another
Hey,
tank.
real quick, I've
That's
had
what's
something
going on.
eating my soul for about 15 minutes.
Yes.
With all due respect to my friend Steve Carell, did you a minute ago say Andy or Chuck and
No.
Navy?
What? Chuck was in there.
No, he was Army too.
I'm Army.
Okay, sorry,
Oh,
sorry.
that's no big deal, I don't care that.
Sorry, Army. Well, don't hold that
And
against
again,
you.
I do-
I'm not bringing this up, I'm just trying to make sure. We're talking a lot of money. And we better get our facts in order and make sure this is solid before we make any commitments on a
So you're
proposal.
talking $90,000.
That's, I just don't think that that's there. I just don't think you can use that as an itemized item
Okay,
to put towards the cost of this plan.
however you wanna
Scott
look.
said it with the 100,000 that he already said, if you took 100 out of the 320. I just look at this as how he laid out a plan to pay for all of this. Not that this is new money, but he just got done saying there was 320,000, he was only asking for 308. There's your 90,000 difference, if you wanna say you don't have that. Is-
Well, then he's short 90,000. If you're wanting to pay for this and have, cover the cost of the 308, you're saying that 90,000 of that you're counting at from this revenue, but you're not getting 90,000 more dollars.
But 90 doesn't disappear either. Let's go back to my example, $90 in gas. Now my wallet is empty. My employer gives me $90 to put back in my wallet. My wallet doesn't stay empty. Where's that 90 come back from?
Okay, so point of discussion, I am going to stick with going through all this in the budget. I've never voted against the pay raise for you, Sam, but I'm gonna abstain until we get into the budget. I think you'll have the
I think that's
votes.
a wise
I
idea.
think you'll have the votes for it regardless, but I'm gonna call for a vote.
All right. All those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm gonna abstain until.
And one abstain, so motion carried.
Before we go any further, I don't wanna take more time at all, I don't. I hope you know whether we agree or we disagree on things. My 34 employees are dedicated to this county.
Absolutely.
And my hat's off to, and if they can hear me or whoever can hear me, not only to the council and commissioners, but Jim Bryan and all the workers here in Owen County. But my hat's off to my 34 employees, I tell you what, because they're second to none. They stand behind that. I thank you for your commitment.
Thank you, Sam.
Matt. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for bringing in the stuff.
Oh, and high noon tomorrow, we'll have lunch.
All right.
Motion to approve that the president go ahead and sign the, any confirmation
Second.
summaries.
For the record, I also want to make sure that it's understood that there are the regular ones that are in this batch, but also, if you remember, we voted to give EMS, certain EMS positions, a specific increase. There's a complete inventory as well for every one of his employees in there for the record, so.
Okay, so motion's been made by Chuck and seconded by Andy.
Yes, I thought I did.
Okay.
That's okay. Sign away.
All those in favor? Motion carried. Sheila, are they supposed to be in here?
I'll be able.
All right, okay.
I'd also like to make a motion to suspend the rest of the agenda if we're gonna go into a recess for budget hearings, because anything further that is necessary under this portion
Here you go, Paul.
can be brought up at another time, because I really honestly don't think we're gonna have that many.
Well, we just have comments left and,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
all right, so let's recess. Do we have to have that as a motion?
Well, the good
No.
news.
Okay,
You just say we're in recess.
we're in recess. And when do we want to start back up?
15 minutes,
Sounds good.
at least then we can tell everybody.
10:45. Okay,
Madam Chairman,
yes,
did that motion carry? That was,
Yes.
for the sheriff, yes.
no.
Oh, for what? For the building
Only two,
department?
1 against and 3 abstained.
Oh, yeah, what'd you find out?
Abstention votes establish a quorum, but they do not count as a positive or a negative vote. So as odd as it sounds, if the vote would be one yay and everyone else abstains, it passes by 1-0. So I think in your
There you
case, it's 2-0.
2-1, I
It was
think.
2-1,
It did carry.
so.
Sorry about
So is that the same for the building?
All the years I've been
Would
on.
that be the same for the building?
Building was 3, when there were 2, yeah.
It didn't carry?
Yes, that did.
So did they,
Suzanne, was
you
it,
guys decide on an exact?
is that your motion?
So it didn't, so then it didn't count though on the compensation discussion vote, because that was 2-3-1.
We,
So that does not pass.
Right, I'm sorry, so if there was 2 positive and 3 negative, then it did not. So 2 positive, 3 negative, it did not pass.
okay, so you know.
Wait a minute.
Well, there was,
So there was the
okay.
reverse.
Positive, 1 negative for Sheila's.
There was.
It was, yeah, it was for Sheila's, it was 2,
2 for, 1 abstain and 3 against, so that one fell.
which one was that?
That was for mine. 2 for, 1 abstain and 3 against.
I thought there were 3.
No, it was 3
Three
abstentions, no, yours
I'm
counted.
sorry, 3.
Yours counted.
It was, yeah, 2 for, 1 against, and 3 abstentions.
Yes.
You guys never decided on an exact dollar amount.
You gave a presentation,
Yeah, well, I thought it was
The
the,
letter was 19 something in midpoint, if it's midpoint, which is what is being looked at the others, you guys did not get. And you also, I'm sorry, but you didn't, when you approved the holiday pay, you approved to pay it, but you didn't say where to pay it from. But your meeting is recessed, so you need to unrecess it if you're gonna discuss it, or we're gonna have to bring it back
Chuck is,
You already did, already.
What?
Did you have a-
No.
What are you doing?
Oh, I never
I have this.
Doug will make it.
fire right on my head.
Yeah, but that's on your back.
Yep.
But hey, I got next week. I think
Did you get it done?
Huh?
Did you get it done?
Yeah. Yeah, they're forming it. It's one quarter today.
What are you charging on?
Big one.
Could you move on?
Thunder's clear. Watch that cord. Hey, tell me to watch that cord.
Watch the cord.
Okay.
Well, it all depends on what it is. You can't get no process. You know, of course, you gotta, oh yeah, you gotta look at it and see, you know. I can get a general idea.
Alright. Everybody gets sit down.
Huh?
How you move?
I got it, hold it.
Okay.
I wood, I brought wood, he ought to hold it for me.
What you got for $400?
Well, it's, around here, it's all stopping.
Okay, it has been brought to my attention that we need to, is unrecess a word? The actual meeting, because there were a couple of, things that were not done that should have been done. From the auditor, we need to know what funds and the rate, is that correct, Sheila?
The hourly rate for the auditor's position, and then also where to pay the holiday pay from.
Okay, but I had funds on where yours is coming as well, so we need to clarify the rate for that position and where the funds are coming from, is that correct?
And the 1150 and the 1131 funds will be primarily used, and the least amount will be taken from the general fund. And then should not use the general fund the rest of this year.
Okay, so we need to make that into a motion of where it's coming, right, so it can be, publicized. Does anybody?
Was there a fund she recommended?
1150 and what?
1150 and 1131 are the two primary funds that will be used, and the balance differences for the 2023 budgets will have some coming from the general fund. That's for the 2023.
That's for the holiday pay.
No, that's for her payroll clerk,
Yeah.
that she needs to, that we voted for.
Okay.
So does anybody want to put that into a motion so we can?
Yeah, I'll put that in. Was one of the funds 1131?
1131, 1150 with the balance coming from the general fund.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion made by Nick, seconded by Burl. Any discussion? All those in favor?
An hourly rate.
Huh?
I need the hourly
Okay.
rate.
Do we want to do that as a second motion or include that?
I have to know that rate in order to advertise an amount.
Okay, we want to do the second motion,
Okay,
or you want to add it to the first motion?
let's add that to the first motion.
Okay, so we'll withdraw that. vote.
right,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so that, was there 19, what is the middle? What's the middle?
What was the hourly rate that you,
I had the midpoint and used comparable to
I need
what
to,
the highway had got. Angela, do you still have that?
The letter had 19.5 per hour. If you are setting it at that, just remember that because we've not fully converted, that's the base and current level combined. So that we'd do the reverse math to come up with a new base rate of pay, but the net of those two would be $19.50 per hour.
Well, I make it in my motion.
I should abstain from that, right? Since that yeah.
And I did abstain, so I will be abstaining on this.
So reiterate it there.
Okay, I make a motion that we grant $19.50 per hour, that's mid-level, and take it out of 1031 or 1131?
11:31
1131.
and 11:50 also, right, Sheila?
Yes.
11:31, 11:50 with the balance out of general.
Okay, yes, those two funds have got some in them? Is those your funds, Sheila?
Yes, that's
Okay.
the auditor's endorsement and the sales disclosure fund.
Okay. Yes, that's the motion.
So is
Use
there,
those two funds, $19.50, take the remainder amount out of general, what are we looking at as I make that motion? What are you thinking on that, Sheila?
As a total,
No, how much do you think it will come out of general?
I think I'll have enough for at least a third of it in the 2023 budget. I'm not needing anything from the general fund now.
Nothing this year, possibly you will have enough in those two line items, you cover a third of it.
You abstained, didn't you?
Okay.
On,
Okay,
I voted second on the or to take it out of, but I can't second this deal.
so motions on the floor by Nick. Do I hear a second?
who seconded this last time, Chuck?
Earl did.
Well, I seconded the motion to take it out of the fund, but I ain't gonna second the thing because I abstained on the other, on the 19 something. So I can't do that.
I have to abstain because I have a family member that is applying.
You guys know where I'm at.
So what do we do with
The
this?
motion fails.
So you can't,
So it passed in the original meeting, but it fails now because one less vote.
So how did it pass?
How did
that's the one that was
Well, he-
abstained. We had what, 3 abstain and
Yeah,
2?
seeing he voted on that,
Yeah, and Chuck's not here.
he's not here.
Your letter, Sheila, did it not outline the details needed to complete it? So then why would we need to take another vote? Because didn't her letter, where's the letter? Who has a copy of the letter? Let's look at that before we do.
your
It's in.
Well, I've already shuffled it into some other papers, so.
What, do you have
Can
it
you
in your
bring up
email?
your email?
You know what? I might have it on a hard one. I think we should double
We're
check.
thinking the first passing included.
It may have, let's double check that, in all fairness here. So her
But
letter,
you've got several other council members that have their packets, is it in your packet?
well, the letter,
Let me look through my packet.
so the letter definitely stated the rate. So if the original motion approved this, then why would we need to take another vote for the rate? Because the rate was already in there. You see what I'm saying?
I used the 1950.
It says $19.50. Now, I think it is generally understood that that is the current base and current level, and a total $19.50. But the other thing, it says, I've indicated I have funds available from the auditor's endorsement fund 1150 and sales disclosure 1131 to help with some of the increase to minimize the impact on the general fund. So the intent is to utilize those, but I guess that is the part, and maybe with Verl's point, if the rate part was already voted on and there's nothing further needed, and you're willing to second, then the only thing really needed would be to clarify, do an appropriation or authorize those two funds to be used. That's the only vote we would really need to take.
Right.
So
So the original motion would have been correct.
Right,
Because he was,
in all fairness, I'm going by what Sheila told me I needed.
So we need to, with your motion, make a motion to include those funds. Is that what we're asking, Anton?
Yeah, to use.
We're not.
For this to carry, we've already passed it. We will use the funds that she's 1131 and 1150 to make, to use.
To fund
To
what
fund
we
this
voted on
motion.
earlier.
The rest of this year.
Okay,
Right.
Yeah, 2022.
Right.
for 2022.
So would I need to abstain from that? So we're just talking about what funds it's coming from. Do I need to abstain from that?
No.
Okay. So we've got a motion on the floor of what funds for it to come from, the 1150 and 1131, with the balance from the general. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Burl. All those in favor? All those opposed? 3-1 with 1 abstaining. Okay, that was.
Okay, can I make a point of order real quick, Madam President?
Yes.
So, we came in here having voted last month for $125,000 cap on pay raises or.
Out of the general.
Out of the general fund. Since then, we also included the recorder. And then there'll be a portion out of what was just voted on that would come off that as well.
In 2023. You said you had enough enough to cover it this year.
But for the,
Yeah.
for the sake of the next 3 months, say, look, I wanna talk to you folks about taking whatever's left of that and going ahead and applying it as close as we can get to the midpoint so that it goes to where it's going to, because if we keep hacking away at it, it's not gonna be equitable.
Good point, Andy. I think the question I would ask, how many people would be affected if we divide up this 100, whatever the balance is? How many people's pay are we looking at, Anton? Because we've given a lot of people, give the sheriff department, EMS, 911, how many people is gonna be affected with this, and how many pieces is this pie gonna be cut in?
Well, we could get the sheriff numbers in, which that was just voted on, so there's no way I've been able to plug them in. But if we were to get those in there, which included 2 of the support staff that would have been, normally a part of that, we would have some more accurate figures. The same with the auditor's part, and again, I'm talking system-wide, so we know what all the costs are. But whatever's, as I mentioned earlier, if you, without putting those changes in, we know that if we were to get everybody halfway to the midpoint essentially, that to the general fund, that would be about $119,000. Now, the auditors, part of the auditors would be backed out of that a little bit because all of that was in that number, but now, at least temporarily, some of it isn't. Yes, the recorder is currently out of perpetuation, but maybe not in 2023. We've not made a decision on that yet. I still don't agree that the recorder's part or other things should be taken out of that 125, but, just to keep the numbers simple, it's 119,000 at the moment. If that makes sense.
Okay.
But we don't have a number of employees that,
Well, we can look down through the detail,
I know it doesn't take the time, but I'm probably.
but there are a wide variety of employees, part-time and full-time, that would see some kind of a raise. But keep in mind, if you're already less than the halfway towards the midpoint, if that's weird language, I know. But if you're already, anybody that's already paid more than that is not gonna get anything. I wanna make sure that's clear.
Understood.
But people that are not there already would certainly get an increase to that point. It also would not include, at the moment, because we've not made a decision on elected officials, if you remember, you can't change elected officials now, but you can do it for 23.
Yes.
So there's that cost that you'd need to figure in. And
So your thought is the elected officials will also come out of that amount of money?
it is, and currently in that 119 projection, let me check here. Just to make sure we're on the same page. Currently, some of them would see, they're in that number. And I'm gonna pick on the assessor, he's no longer in the room, but like the assessor's position, his portion would be about $1,000 cost. So consequently, the chief deputy would see an increase because it's a percentage of that position. So those are all in that 119 number right now.
And on this, a quick crazy statement, but what if we figure the number of people, the amount of money, divide that in there and give them a cost of living raise? I know you're talking about going from low to middle to high, to middle, whatever.
Yeah, the trouble with that, and I mean, you can do whatever you want, but considering we know that there's we're trying to realign positions to what they're doing. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was the whole point. You know, we have a misalignment right now of what people are actually doing in positions and what levels of pay they're getting now. If you just go back to a blanket increase, that's not gonna solve any of those problems. It's just gonna make it worse. You're gonna make those differences even bigger.
So how long would it take to take the whatever's left, say, and look at generating, trying to get folks percentage-wise the same, maybe that's 95% of midpoint, maybe that's 90% of midpoint across the board.
I don't know.
Can we, do we need for this to be in the regular meeting or just kind of this be an ongoing discussion?
Well, the reason I brought it up is we've used a regular meeting to give people raises today.
Yeah,
So
I'm just,
before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I feel like we need to address how we're gonna skin this cat, because the money's gonna be gone.
Good point. Fair point, Andy.
I would just, again, this is what I already brought up earlier, is that if you commit, I honestly believe that if you commit to going halfway for everybody, it's reasonably prudent financially to do that. You're affecting a lot of people in a lot of departments that at the moment are still in limbo. There's nothing for them. And we would solve our classification issues. We would have numbers that we can use the entire budget hearings to plug into our funds and line items that are solid. We know what kind of workers' comp numbers we're gonna be working with. There's a lot of things that this really is connected to that would really give us some clarity.
How does it connect to our resolve to maintain $1.4 million in our general fund?
That's gonna be a little unknown because we don't yet know how much we may wanna earmark towards a jail project and making sure we have enough there towards that. You kinda have to do a little reverse math to see,
And
but
question I have now is, this whole scenario has changed because we just, a minute ago, spoke of elected officials coming out of this pay as well. We had never, as far as I know, had never mentioned that before. So where would you take the elected officials to if you go midway on all?
I think he's
Well, I will clarify that elected officials have always been a part of this, and this is a system-wide project. So it includes all of your elected officials too. So if we say we're gonna bring it to halfway towards the midpoint,
Okay,
that includes elected officials too.
which would be how much?
That's it, that's in that figure I gave you. So the grand total would be 119,000 for your general fund.
So they're gonna get well,
Well, and the assessor was the example I mentioned, that, that's about a $900 increase for that, and that's just an example of one of the positions, so.
Chuck asked me to tell you he's having a medical issue, he needs to go home.
Ah, okay.
Okay, in getting other employees midway, or, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's all it is. Interrupted. 2 drinks, I don't know. I'll get rid of this. We're thinking, what, $900 for the elected officials?
Well, in the case of the assessor, yes. Let's see, auditor is already getting paid a little more.
How close are we getting the employee, the chief deputies of an office, how close are we getting them to the elected official?
Well, the plan would include getting them at 85% of whatever the elected official is. That's automatic.
So you mean there's a cap there? Okay.
Yeah.
So the elected official's gonna be protected by 15%.
Basically, yeah.
Of their, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's built in already. That was a recommendation that was made to make sure you have your chief deputy at 85% of what the corresponding elected official is for that office.
So, if you don't mind me asking, Jim.
Sure.
You said that there's a 6-digit number that would get us in the ballpark of being able to maintain the $1.4 million and also be relatively safe in the economic environment that we're in. So we set 125,000. Now pushing that number up, in your eyes, what's the risk?
Oh, you're gonna have huge risk.
Definitely more risk.
I mean, it's not, yeah, you have voted, I'm not here to change any vote, and I have no adversarial relationship with anybody on this council. In fact, when Councilman Neff talked about the 90,000, I'm in total agreement. You cannot double count the $90,000. So what I feel like I have a duty to kind of present, on the form right there, like in front of the sheriff, it's $418,000 is what the total amount of those increases by its own thing. You take those increases, then you take the component, then you take the chief deputy, and I believe the jail matron, and I think if those numbers are right. So you've got $418,000 there. You passed an ordinance today for the recorder perpetuation fund for 2023. She's going to pay her part-time and she's going to pay her supplies. If the new position is going to remain, every bit of that is coming out of the general fund. It has to. I have no quibbles as far as should that be increased or not increased. I'm just talking about just direct, absolute money. That money then in 2023 from the recorder for the, whatever the chief deputy or full-time, whatever the position is, has to come out of now the general. You're now in a range of talking about increases out of the general. The council, you have maintained roughly 1.514 for a 3-month period of time. I don't see that really much changing, which leaves you, if you want to have a reserve of 1.4 million, that it has to stay at 100. If I even am close to my numbers here, 1170, the budget that's coming up to you, it meets the 3 million. I don't even know that there, at this point, there's even a margin. every bit of your 1170 is probably has to be appropriated. That's still not enough. You're now going to have to go to 1233, you're gonna have to go to the jail housing, and you're gonna work on a reimbursement at some time just to pay for that. Then, there are going to be commissioners and others who are going to come up and going to say, look, as best as could be done, there's gonna be a 5% increase probably in insurance, there's going to be these increases. Most of that, or some of that is going to come from the general. You're looking at now roughly $119,000 to $120,000 increase in some fashion. Mathematically, there's no quibble whatever with council enough as far as one way. But you are definitely already, before the budget is started, and I do believe that there's a duty to resent. They're going to ask for $400,000 more in increases on the budget as presented. That doesn't mean you're going to give it. If you only have 100 to 125, at least 300,000, 350 has to be known off to the top. And we haven't even got into the other funds of 76, 73, 1151, health, and 1159. What I'm saying is everything that's coming to you is legitimate, but already in the first part of the meeting, hundreds of thousands of dollars have already been approved. The 125 from just from my perspective, I don't put it in the range of wages or salary thing. 125,000 is right now the amount that you have, we wouldn't have to go into reserve. If the roof comes off the health department building, if the elevator goes out, that's all just, from my perspective, that's just money. That just means that's gonna be paid, probably gonna come out of the general, it's gonna be done. You are the fiscal body, you make any determination you want, but the very long answer to your question, 125 is 125, 100's better, 125. However you wanna split that up is fine. But respectfully, council, you're getting into a zone of just how much comfort level. If you're comfortable as a council of having lower cushions, that's where this is heading. You've asked me like this for an opinion. My opinion is the higher the cushion is what I would suggest is more comfortable due to inflation, due to supply chain, due to fuel, due to absolutely a jail project now. If we do 1.5 million, if you know you can't use 11.7, you know that's out. You know that you're just taking $170,000 out of 1233 for an indefinite period of time, maybe 15, maybe 20 years, that you can't use that. Jail housing, correct, gets an income, 84,000. Respectfully count, 84,000 is less than 170,000. You're not going to make it up. The 90,000's already been spent. Yes, it's coming back, that's great, absolutely it's great. But it's already been inputted as your revenue. So now you can go to lit edit and you can go to general fund on where you're gonna get that other $700,000 or $800,000 for the jail when it actually comes in. That's where we're at. So I don't see how you would want to go more than about 125,000, in this area, if that's a hard cap. If your 1.4 million is a hard cap, you're not gonna see much more than that until December, then it's definitely gonna go up. And that's totally fine, council, from your perspective. Do you wanna look at it as a monthly income of 425,000 or 260? That's totally your perspective. Both numbers are correct. But payday only comes twice. You still have to manage your cash flow. And that has been a difficulty in the past. Not now, not in the near past, but in the far past, managing cash flow has not been, it has been just an issue that needs to be looked at. But that's where I'm looking at, or whether any of this even makes any sense or it helps in any way. You get under this $125,000, you're dipping in. You don't have a rainy day fund, and you only have about $200,000 in your river right now. That's your safety valve.
So with that, council, thank you, counselor. We don't have to get into the monetary aspect. I wanna make a motion that we take the 125,000, subtract the recorder's amount, subtract the auditor's amount, and then equally, an equal percentage goes towards bringing everybody else to midpoint and put this to bed for now.
At least those that are not there yet.
Great.
I.
That's a much more costly figure, Andy, cause this is not taking them to the midpoint.
No, I said an equal percentage trying to get them to the midpoint.
They wouldn't get him to the.
They-
It's not gonna get them, I wanna
Yeah,
clarify.
equal percentage spread, yeah, I know what you're saying.
So what is we need the dollar amount then.
Yeah, we need,
We're at 119,
Well-
we're subtracting recorder.
Yep.
Right? And so that amount,
We're at 125, correct?
well, 125, that's your limit. Let's see what the recorder's was.
Still have a couple of departments that are planning on coming in and offering up some funds to try to help go toward their raises as well. I feel they deserve to be heard. It'll help. There's some departments that are still outside the county general fund that can pay for their own raises. Specifically the health department and those kinds of things.
They don't have any,
There's, if they're under a, they can't fund general fund folks.
should we get into
separate.
that? Swap this over the budget, or we still on this?
What's that?
Should we swap this over? And kind of discuss that on the budget side, or, still in the meeting?
I'll tell you, if we start going through each individual department, we'll run out of money before.
Oh, I know, I agree with you. No, I agree with you.
So if we get it done.
it's like the ones that have no avenue, like the however many, 20 employees
Are
or
you
whatever
figuring up
the
the-
figure is.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, recorder,
The ones
and,
that don't
yep,
have any, a way to fund. You see what I'm saying?
You said, so we're talking about general.
Yeah, I mean, like the clerk's office and different ones that
Right.
don't have any other avenue, don't have any other,
monies.
except for the general fund, if you could just kind of.
Yeah, so what I would do is, do this, and they've got money to offer up in there. I would say we would increase the amount to try to get it toward midpoint. Because anything taken away, you say the clerk got $10.
what'd you come up
Would
with?
help the general fund.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I think so.
the recorder's part is 30,500, that's the base wage there. The auditor's part was 28,751. I believe that's right. This is not counting the adjustment we just made, but, that's 59,251. You subtract that from 125,000, you get 65,749 left. If you plug that in, it gets everybody to the low point plus, about a quarter of the way to the midpoint, because you've cut that in half, essentially. So, your total cost to the general fund would be about 65,900, which is pretty close to the 65,749 that we would have if you subtracted those out.
Some of these people have already, we've got them beyond this.
Right, this wouldn't, anybody that's
Above that.
that's already above wherever you put this
Yeah.
is, there's nothing for them because they're already above this point. But anybody at this point or less would see some kind of amount depending on how far off they are. But again, remember what Jim said, not too long ago was that, we had about, what, $400,000 in request, 450 or something, you're talking general fund. But remember, most of these that I saw in there include requests to go to the midpoint, okay? So if you're doing this or trying to go this route, then that wouldn't be there, because this is in that number.
We could, if we did something like this, then we could just say, take the raises, for the ones in the general fund, take their raise request off, because this will take care of that. Is that what we're all?
Well, it'd be a step towards their number, because if
Right.
someone put in for midpoint, and then we're coming at the other side of that saying, well, we're gonna get you a quarter of the way there, well, that's
Better than.
that's part of that cost. But again, this would be system-wide, so we're just focusing on general because that's where the financial challenge is. Remember, we already did sheriff here, we did EMS, that's not a part of any of this. We already did a number of departments already, they're not a part of this. The total system-wide would be $179,000. The county general would be about $66,000. That's half of what we were just talking about this morning.
So with that, you wanna make, did I make a motion before?
You did, but we never got a second.
Yeah, so, okay, well, I'm gonna restate the motion real quick, if you don't mind, Madam President. And that's, we take the 125, we take the 30,500 and the 28,751 from the recorder and the auditor respectfully. And I think what we're applying, that's $59,251.
65,000.
Or
$749.
65,749. We apply it towards a equal share to get folks towards the midpoint. And I'll add the addition that Polly mentioned a minute ago, and that's if there is any cost savings throughout any of the offices within the general fund that we can come up with any money from, we would apply it towards helping.
The 65,000, right.
So at the end of the 2 or 3 days, this would be 100,000 that's gonna be divided up, if there's any savings.
If there is, yes.
I second that.
Motion made by Andy, seconded by Nick. Any more questions?
Yes. I still think that we've got the resources to work. We're not that far off here. And yes, this is a good step. I'm not sure why we're subtracting the recorder and auditor from it. I still don't quite.
Well, Anton, I will tell you this. If we get to mid-year next year and the funds are available, I would be happy to talk more about it. I'm just yielding on.
So again, starting point only, we're just making this as an initial commitment. When we go through the budget hearings, we're gonna be using these numbers to fill in the gaps and then see where we are. I would imagine we do reserve the opportunity to go further if we can, and that's in your motion, if there's offsets or some other opportunities.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So any other questions?
And who seconded that?
That was Nick seconded.
Okay, and that was agreed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not equal apply. Again, it's filling the gap equally. It's a
Right.
percentage in this case.
No one's getting.
We're not giving everybody $500
Right.
even. We're
Are we
giving a
ready to
percentage.
call for a vote? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carried. And we just have to address the holiday pay and where that's coming from. There's, what was there, like 253,000 in Riverboat?
Oh, yeah, there's 200 and some thousand in the
230.
riverboat side.
230.
What was the total amount that needed,
53 something, I don't put my papers away, sorry.
whatever that amount was to cover the EMS And the, dispatch,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a motion that we take it out of Riverboat.
Motion made by Andy, do we have a second?
I do.
Second by Burl. Any other questions?
And that was, Riverboat, you said?
Yeah.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Okay, now are we ready to recess and go into budget hearings? Okay,
Now, I would suggest that we have some time to plug in our numbers next, because we're not gonna be able to do anything without. So,
I agree with
maybe
that.
allow a little bit of time to,
Do we want to take lunch? And then come down?
that'd be enough time.
I apologize to everybody that was on the schedule for this morning. I knew it was gonna run over, but I didn't realize it was going. So what do we wanna do, take a,
I think in light of what Anton said, yes, let's break for lunch and come back at what, 1:00, 12:30, I don't care.
Yeah, if we come back at the time we're scheduled to come back, that's fine, but if we do wanna just go in as close as we are to lunch, just go ahead and go, then that'd be enough time to,
What time does our,
we originally had lunch from 11:45 to 1.
oh, okay,
Do we want, I mean, what do we wanna do about
that's
that?
enough time.
That's plenty of time. Do we want that much, do we need that much time?
I still want lunch. I still want a lunch, but,
a couple, so.
yeah, yeah.
And we're behind commissioners and highway department.
You gotta
Correct.
recess
I'd
that
say-
and then you gotta open it.
Yeah, you wanna make it clear on,
Do what?
You have to officially open the budget hearings and then recess until.
Yeah, open up the budget hearing now.
Oh, okay, so officially,
In the meeting.
okay. Well,
I make a motion we adjourn.
Oh, recess.
recess it.
I make a motion we recess current meeting.
Do I have a second?
Yep.
Seconded by
I'll
Andy,
make a motion that we open the budget.
and motion made to open budget hearings.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
We're coming back at 1:00.
Now, recess the budget meeting until we come back at whatever time you like.
What's everybody, I mean, you guys are the ones, 1 o'clock?
schedule.
1, okay. So we've recessed until we start back at 1. I'm sorry, everybody.